Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. I'm Mike Graham and this is the Mike Graham Show. It's 7:01 and just about 1 or 2 seconds, so we're terribly sorry. We come to you a little bit late. The international clock set us back slightly, but not to worry because we have got plenty to talk to you about and plenty to say. It is, of course, the 14th of April. It's Tuesday. As we go, the Straits of Hormuz are, I think, blockaded, but I'm not really sure. We'll find out about that as we go forward. We'll find out whether Trump rolls the dice on blockade, as the Times says, turns out to be true. The big story this morning, though, probably has to be the inquiry into the Southport killings, which happened, of course, not long enough ago, I'm afraid, for us to in any way forget the trauma and the ghastliness and the horrific nature of the killings. I'm going to try and do what I always do at this juncture, which is to not mention the name of the killer, just because I can't stand mentioning him and I don't want to think about him at all, really, because at the moment the front pages are full of stories about the 3 little girls who did not have to die, as it says on the front page of The Sun. BB King, 6 years old, Elsie Dot Stancombe, 7 years old, and Alice De Silva Aguilar, 9 years old. According to the inquiry report which came out yesterday, several public bodies, including the police, failed to stop these killings, which they could have done. And now the parents are in the frame as well for not telling the authorities about the dangerous nature of their son. Russell Quirk is here with me. Russell, very good morning to you.
Yeah,
terrible story to talk about in the first instance this morning, but we sort of have to because we knew this would be what they would say. The question is whether anything now happens as a result of the fact that, you know, I think it was Shabana Mahmood yesterday who said basically everybody failed and it was everybody's fault, and so it ended up being nobody's fault, which is a kind of very English way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's so much to say about this. Notwithstanding the tragedy itself. So, first of all, let's focus on the parents, the father in particular, who seemed to know an awful lot about what this hideous monster son of his was up to.
Yeah.
This is a son, of course, that was caught no less, I think, than 10 times having a knife in school, and was in all sorts of trouble. Ricing under his bed alongside an Al-Qaeda manual. What mother doesn't look under their son's bed, frankly?
I know.
So I think the big
also
question
constant sort of deliveries of knives, machetes, weapons that they knew he was collecting.
We left the knife packaging open on the kitchen worktop.
Yeah.
So the parents knew damn well what this kid was doing.
Yeah.
So the parents obviously are complicit. And you could argue, if you're on the left, I suppose, well, it's difficult, isn't it, because it's your son. No, I think if your son is a raging psychopath who's clearly a danger to the public, you have a moral duty, yes, to shop him or her in rare cases. But I think this needs to go further now. I don't know if a law exists, but if it doesn't, it bloody damn well should. The father and the mother should be prosecuted for conspiracy to murder.
Yes.
That's
well,
exactly
certainly the front
happened.
page of the Daily Express says, the headline says, now hold them to account for their moral failure to act. Bereaved families of the Southport victims want his parents to be held to account for their failure to stop the killer. Inquiry Chairman Sir Adrian Fulford said yesterday that the murderous attack would not have happened had the mum and dad done what they morally ought to have done. No question.
But of course...
I don't mind mentioning their names, Alphonse Rudikabana and Lactitia Muzaire, who both came to this country from Rwanda. And we've often spoken about this in the past, that, you know, people who come from places where extreme violence goes on tend to be fairly traumatised by that violence and perhaps maybe inured to it.
Well, I can say normalised.
Yeah.
You know, if you come from a place like that and the slaughter and the genocide that obviously Rwanda was subjected to. So look, I think there's a huge case to answer here in terms of the parents, of course.
Is there a case for kicking them back to Rwanda?
Well,
you know?
Look, if they've committed a crime and they are first-generation immigrants, then I would say yes, on the basis that, look, I think most sensible, right-thinking people think that if there's anyone in this country that is doing the country harm, including conspiring to allow their son to carry out such crimes, I think there's a huge case to answer.
You know, the Home Office put a tweet out just yesterday or the day before saying anybody who comes to this country in order to do it harm or in some way to create a problem has got no business being here. But they weren't very specific about what the parameters would be.
But what I'm concerned about is all this rhetoric and in the media, and we'll get it from politicians, of course, as well, even those politicians that perhaps indirectly are also complicit here, are words and phrases like holding to account. I mean, what the hell does that mean? Why don't we just say it as it is? They should be in prison. They should be prosecuted. Find a law, a charge that will stick, because if this had been labelled as terrorism, which of course it wasn't, even though clearly in my view it is.
Well,
it is.
One of the reasons that people were so upset and so angry at the time was because of the complete and utter sort of blanket that was thrown over all the facts of what was going on.
Stepping back, well, Starmer and the police and CPS refused to identify who the person was. This was a Welsh choir boy.
When they finally did identify him, he was a Welsh choir boy.
Yeah. So there was an attempt, an obfuscation to try to hide his identity and therefore his background and his ethnicity, I would say, on the basis that they knew that there would be an uproar on the basis of that. So there's all of that. And then we need to move on to the likes of, I know we'll get on to Keir Starmer in a minute, but also the so-called authorities, the likes of Prevent.
Yes.
I mean, if ever there was an organisation with the wrong name, it's Prevent.
Well, do you remember my conversation with Lord Carlisle when I was back at Talk, where he got very, very worked up when I said to him that it's not, your organisation is not fit for purpose. He was referred 3 times to Prevent, which would normally result in him being at the very least put into care or possibly put into some kind of secure unit, and yet nothing was done.
So I mean, there's at least a breach of the Trade Descriptions Act, I think, isn't there, in terms of an organisation that's supposed to prevent terrorism not doing so. And the fact that, yes, he slipped through the net many times. Apparently they stopped pursuing him in terms of him being a threat because he refused to engage. Well, I would suggest that someone with terrorist tendencies, who's a bit of a psychopath, might not engage.
One of the failings of Prevent is that apparently you can only actually sort of engage with Prevent if you want to. So it's not as if they can come to you and go, we think you might have terrorists.
You have to be a terrorist that voluntarily puts your hand up.
That's fine, right? And so I said exactly that. I said, you don't prevent anything. And he said, well, in the large, majority of cases, we do prevent terrorist activity. Well, that's not good enough, I'm afraid.
But then, of course, look, we've got police, social services, all of the other authorities that were acknowledged to one degree or another and aware of what this animal was doing. But I, on the way in, I thought, this is not the first time that we've heard those words, that there have been systemic failings by way of the authorities in XYZ case. So, I mean, going back in history, I mean, literally, I asked for a list, and I won't bore you with all of them, but whether it's, Rotherham child sex scandal, whether it's Mid-Staffordshire NHS scandal, Baby P, Stephen Lawrence murder, child sex abuse in Rochdale, London Bridge terror attack, and so on and so on. How many times now in Britain have we heard those words, oh yes, there's definitely been an abject failure of the authorities? Hang on a sec, that's what you're all there for.
Yeah, exactly.
Is to ensure that your very function, which is to protect people and to make sure that people that are out in society wanting to cause us harm, whether it be through terrorist tendencies, mental health or whatever, all of these people, whether it be police, the judicial system, social services, Prevent, what on earth are they doing? And where is the accountability, Mike, in terms of the people at the head of these organisations that clearly have failed the public, ending in deaths, maiming and misery and harm? Why are these people not being held to account? At least fire someone.
I know, because the trouble with this country, right, is that we have fallen into this kind of trap where if you set some process up by which people can be monitored, that's all you've got to do. It doesn't actually matter if the process doesn't work. I actually heard somebody saying this yesterday, who was kind of trying to account for how it was that all the different sort of services that should have intervened didn't, because the process was in place, but they just didn't follow the process. Well, that's not of any bloody use to the parents of these 3 murdered little girls and the other girls and 2 adults who were injured.
And then the other elephant in the room, and again, I'll tell it how I see it, is that I think this is the 3rd instance in the news in the last few weeks where it seems that the people involved at the very heart of being able to prevent these things have not done so because of the ethnicity of the person involved.
Well, there's
the
a story
killer,
here.
The Manchester Arena bomber. I mean, we know this is now the 3rd time in a few weeks that we're now talking about the fact that these individuals went and did what they did, blowing up arenas, killing people in Nottingham, and now this monster. The authorities failed to do anything about it because they didn't want to be seen to be racist.
Yes. Well, the head teacher at the school that he attended, which was a place called the Acorn School, a pupil referral unit in Ormskirk, right? He went there because he was expelled from mainstream education for bringing a knife into class. The head teacher there, Joanne Hodson, told the public inquiry that she realised the teenager was very high risk with a manner devoid of any remorse. When she tried to raise the risk he posed to others, Mrs. Hodson said she was accused by children's mental health worker Samantha Steed of racially stereotyping him as a black boy with a knife. Well, that's not a racial stereotype. That's a fact.
Yes.
He's a black boy with a knife.
Yes, yeah. And
Sorry.
regardless of his skin colour, he's got a knife, he's a danger, and he should have done something about it.
Yes.
And
He was also apparently registered as an autistic child, and so his autism apparently meant that people got him off the hook. But they said, oh, he's more of a danger to himself than he is to anybody else.
All right, so
well, again, more cobblers.
Well, let's extend this scenario now.
Yeah.
So this is going to happen again, isn't it? I'm afraid. Because if we've got this monster and the Nottingham killer and the Manchester Arena bomber and so on, there will not just be those 3 instances. There will be dozens, if not hundreds of people, individuals that are a danger, that have been allowed to slip through the system because some idiot social worker somewhere has said, can't have a go at him or her because they're black or because they're Pakistani or whatever. So how many other ticking time bombs are there in Britain that are waiting to commit another Southport because of the failings and the cowardice of those people in authority?
Right. Well, do you know what I'd love to do? And in the old days, we would do this as a sort of investigative unit of a newspaper. You go into some social services department, pick one at random, and go in and see how many at-risk teenagers and children they have and which they are monitoring and who they really don't know what they're getting up to from day to day. I bet you there's thousands of them.
Thousands per authority.
There'll be thousands of them.
Per authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And everyone kind of walking on eggshells. Literally, I mean, it's the worst and most sinister kind of a 2-tier approach. We've had 2-tier justice, 2-tier police and so on. Now we've got kind of 2-tier anti-racism almost, whereby there are people that are dangerous but are being allowed to potentially commit further crimes just because the authorities don't want to be seen to be labelling people incorrectly.
Right. Well, did you see that story yesterday? I think Richard Tice put it out from Kent. I mean, not related to this, but it was related to that art exhibition in Margate, which was incredibly anti-Semitic, and it showed pictures of this artist had drawn these pictures of Jews eating babies and all sorts of stuff, right? That was reported by several members of the public to the police as a sort of effectively a hate crime and anti-Semitic exhibition, which was put on for the general public, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what ended up happening? The police didn't investigate the actual pictures, but they started to look into whether to charge the people who had complained about the pictures as if they were committing a hate crime.
Yes.
Because the police have now become so skewed that they think anybody who criticises Jews is good, and anyone who criticises them is bad.
Yeah. Sounds like the leader of Basildon Council. Do you see what the leader of Basildon Council did last week?
Yes, I think you showed me.
Put a video out, which he's now withdrawn, and he says it was a mistake. But he's the leader of the council, so you'd imagine he has a modicum of intelligence.
Yeah.
Produces a video in AI, apparently, which overlays Jewish insults over the faces of Conservative and Reform politicians. Video is up for some hours, lots and lots of complaints. The police are investigating, apparently, but nothing seems to have been done about it. And the Labour Party, headed by Keir Starmer, seems to think it's all fine. You know, that one of his council leaders could be anti-Semitic, put something out on social media, and call Jews kikes and all sorts of other horrendous slurs and offensive names. And 10 days later, Gavin Callaghan from Basildon Council is still the leader of Basildon Council. Yeah. It's
and what's happened?
unbelievable.
Has he taken the thing down at least?
Yeah,
or?
No, he has. And he has apologised, in fairness. But he says he didn't look at the video after he made it and put it up. And it literally has Jew, kike, and all these horrible, disgusting, offensive words that denigrate Jews plastered in text over the front of Conservative and Reform councillors' faces.
Unbelievable.
But apparently that's fine.
Unbelievable. Let's remind ourselves, because a lot of people got very worked up, and Lucy Connolly was one of them. Lucy Connolly's going to be on the show later on today to talk to us about what happened in Southport, because there were 2 things that happened which really, really enraged people. One was the clip I'm about to show you of Keir Starmer, who was moaning and groaning about the far-right thuggery that was going on, right, around the episode of what happened in Southport, because of the fact, but purely and simply because people were outraged that the police and the authorities were not giving out any information about who the perpetrator was. And as long as that goes on, you find out more and more and more that it's likely to be something the authorities are trying to keep quiet. Yeah. Similar to the way that it was reported that a guy has been charged with the murder of a boy on Primrose Hill. And when the first sort of news alert came out, they didn't mention who the guy, they called him a man aged 27.
Yes.
Turns out he's a man aged 27 with a very discernible African name.
Well, they put out an appeal, didn't they, for witnesses? Can you help us find this person? But we're not actually going to tell you who he was or what his skin colour was.
Well, no, because you can't identify. Can you identify this person who was a man aged 27? Well, no, it would help if you told me what he looks like.
Yeah.
There's
a few 27-year-olds running around.
Just ridiculous. Absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. Have a look at this, though. This, if you remember it, was Keir Starmer in the middle of all of this stuff, right? Basically saying what he was going to do to protect mosques and how he was going to crack down on anyone who was, in his words, involved in demonstrating against the crime. Check it out.
Far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery, and it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham. Marauding gangs intent on law-breaking, or worse. Windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none, for taking this action, and all right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence. People in this country have a right to be safe, and yet we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is, far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin or your faith, I know how frightening this must be. I want you to know that this violent mob do not represent our country, and we will bring them to justice. Our police deserve our support as they tackle any and all violent disorder that flares up. Whatever the apparent cause or motivation, we make no distinction. Crime is crime, and this government will tackle it. Thank you.
Just possibly the most disgusting statement I think I've ever seen any Prime Minister of this country make. He didn't mention at all
the girls,
the fear that might have been running through that Taylor Swift dance class, right? And the fear of those people who were targeted because of the colour of their skin by a madman who was raised by mad parents and who killed 3 innocent little young girls under the age of 9.
But you got the most incredible failure to read the room there. Now, you would imagine that part of the qualification for being, or any politician, let alone the Prime Minister, would be the ability to read the room by way of political judgment. What he's just done there, and I don't think, we'll hate seeing Keir Starmer speak, but I don't think you can play that too much in terms of the character of the man. What he's saying is there's no problem here in terms of terrorism. There's no problem here in terms of all of the fear around people coming over here, throwing their identities in the channel. We don't know who they are. Yes, some are criminals. Yes, they've got terrorist tendencies. There's no problem with migrant hotels. And also, we won't tell you who they are, even if we know that they've committed crimes. And we also know that there is a significant element of people in those migrant hotels that went out and committed offences, particularly sexual offences. That was all bubbling at this time, which is why there were people on the street saying, hang on, this Southport thing is the last straw, right? So you've got patriotic people scared of what's happening to our country, out protesting. He takes, 2 or 3 instances to characterise the whole of sensible Britain as far
And then he
right. What a
deliberately
disgrace.
identifies the Muslim community as the one that needs protection.
Protecting.
And then he says, and
Which
it's
he
not
then put some
actually,
money in,
yeah,
didn't he?
it's not actually in that particular clip, but there's another clip in which he says that they're going to protect the mosques of this
Yeah,
country.
we're going to pay 100 million quid to protect that community.
I know.
Yeah, and honestly, in terms of his cloth-eared approach to that, I mean, it's quite incredible. And I guess it also speaks to the fact that, and I rant about this a lot in terms of our political class being completely and utterly out of touch with reality. These people that come out of university, they go and work for Labour or Conservative HQ, they become a SPAD or a bag carrier or whatever. By the time they're 30, 35, they become an MP without having ever had a proper job. This characterises that when you've got politicians that are so left field, so out of touch with the reality and out of touch with the feelings of people, that's what you get.
Right.
That's what you get when we have a class of politician that are in a bubble and they have never mingled with the rest of us. They've got no idea about living in Britain.
No, but they have been got at.
Tasks.
But they have been got at by sections of the community who, for example, like the Muslim community, have worked out how to become politically powerful, how to play them, and how to get what they want.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
Let's get a couple of super chats as we go. Pooch, what do we have? One from Alan. It says, unfortunately, Mike and Russell, I am being censored, so I'm unable to express my full disgust at the family and friends who are complicit every time. Okay, thanks for that. This one from Mick, who says, Keir Starmer's real name is Wayne Kerr. Thank you very much for that. Anything else coming? That's it, okay. Well, let's remind ourselves as well of the other thing, because once he realised that had gone down particularly badly with most of the country, regardless of whether they were people demonstrating or not, and when he realised that there was so much of an outcry about the way the government had reacted to this awful, dreadful event, and I suspect as well once they realised what they found in his kid's house,
but he already knew,
and what they had been told about what had happened before.
Yeah.
He decides to go with Yvette Cooper, I think it was at the time, up to Southport. You might remember this clip to lay some flowers. Let's have an alert for this one.
How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something?
Time to change, Starmer.
Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next?
We're going to stand up for our children. React.
Bye-bye.
Refused to answer questions, refused to speak to the public, despite the fact that many of them were actually grieving members of the community whose friends and family had been victims, right? And normally speaking, Pooch has to tell me how long the clips are so that I know when to come back. But in that case, I know it's only 19 seconds because that was how long he spent paying his so-called respects, disgustingly, to the 3 dead children. And worse than that, it then turned out he went back to London, rushed back to London for a party, which was a sort of, a celebration party for him getting elected into Downing Street, where all sorts of, trans activists and, celebrities turned up, and he was seen smiling and laughing in the face of what was probably one of the worst mass murders in the history of Great Britain.
Well, we've talked about the Southport killer being a psychopath. Clearly, he is, and particularly as he's then gone to prison and started throwing things, hot water laced with sugar at, prison officers and so on. Maybe the other psychopath is Keir Starmer. And the reason I say that is because the definition apparently of a psychopath is someone with no conscience.
No conscience and no empathy.
Keir Starmer's got no conscience.
No.
I mean, he stands there for a photo opportunity. He's being heckled by the crowd. Anyone with an ounce of morality, heart or dignity
would have gone to speak to them.
Would have said to his handlers, I don't give a toss about the Downing Street party in 2 hours' time. I'm staying.
And also cancel the party.
Yeah, cancel the party. I'm going to talk to the local people here. I'm going to sit down with them. I'm going to grieve and I'm going to do the right thing. He was clearly there just for the cameras. That's horribly, horribly backfired. I mean, what a disgrace. What a disgusting individual.
And he only went there not out of any degree of kind of,
it was a photo call.
It was a photo call because he could see that the crowd, i.e. Britain, was turning against him. So he thought, I know, I'll go and put some flowers down and that will sort it all out.
This is also a man now that when he was, and will continue to, when he was campaigning, for instance, for the by-election in Gorton and Denton, and obviously we've got the local elections now in 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
You will not see Keir Starmer walking the streets. You will not see him in a supermarket. You
No.
will not see him in a crowd.
No.
Despite the fact that you've got 20 special branch around him, because he knows, and the people are down the street, his handlers and so on, they all know that he is absolutely hated.
Yeah.
On the world stage,
And he'll get heckled.
On the world stage, ridiculed.
Yeah.
In Britain, hated.
Yeah.
When he goes to a football match, we all know what they chant.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being at a football match, being so unpopular that 10,000 people
Yeah.
are all chanting, if I can say it, Keir Starmer's a wanker?
Yeah, they are. And they do it everywhere he goes. Absolutely everywhere. No, I don't think we should. No, I don't think we should. No, I don't think today's the day for that. However, let's have a look at what Nigel Farage actually said yesterday about Southport.
So the Southport inquiry is out today. Cast your minds back to the horrific murder of those 3 young girls in that Lancashire coastal town. In the aftermath, there were all sorts of wild, crazy conspiracy theories going around the internet as to who the perpetrator may have been. 24 hours on, when I'd learnt something from the local community, I did a video in which I said, please, Prime Minister, tell us the truth. Tell us the identity of the person that has committed these horrific multiple murderers. Was it someone, I asked, who was known to the authorities? And for my trouble, I had nearly 20 major public figures condemn me, attack me, saying the riots were my fault, when the truth of it was, even as the anti-terrorism czar, Jonathan Hall, said, hiding behind something being a matter of a criminal court case is not a reason to withhold the truth. To my absolute shock, at the next Prime Minister's questions, we were told nobody could ask a question about what had happened. Well, I asked the questions I did because I knew that this person had been kicked out of school for carrying a knife and saying very, very extreme things. This report today absolutely vindicates everything I said at the time. A total failure at every level. A failure, yes, of course, of the parents. A failure of Prevent, to whom this guy was reported to more than once. And a total failure of leadership from our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who did what he could to hide the truth about what really happened in Southport on that awful day, because he's terrified of saying anything that he fears might upset elements of the Muslim community. For once...
Brilliant from Nigel Farage, because of course you forget all of the things that happened there. One, he was the first person to say, is this someone who's known to the authorities?
Yep.
And he was absolutely and utterly condemned for it. Then the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, prevented anyone from asking a question in the House along similar lines, claiming that it might prejudice the trial. Absolute and utter nonsense. And of course it turns out that everything that Nigel Farage asked questions about turned out to be as he described them.
I might be slightly biased here, Mike, but
Yeah.
what a statesman Nigel's just shown himself to be in that clip. Put him on a split screen, Keir Starmer's speech versus that speech from Nigel Farage just now. Chalk and cheese.
I know.
There was clear blue sky between the two of them. Nigel, within 24 hours of this incident, was digging into the fact that this was there was a cover-up, there was a conspiracy.
Yeah.
People were trying to obfuscate and trying to distract from what had happened in terms of who it was that had committed the crimes and all of the other kind of evidence around them. And then, yes, in Parliament and in the media, Keir Starmer and his acolytes were trying to prevent, by way of some Orwellian censorship, anyone and everyone talking about the case using, if you remember, the threat of, well, if you talk about it, even in Parliament with parliamentary privilege, it'll collapse the case.
Which is
and
absolutely
that turned out
rubbish.
to be not true at all.
Because he hadn't been charged with anything at that point either.
Yep.
And I mean, they do this a lot, this particular government. They try to frighten people with the law.
Censorship.
And it's censorship, pure and simple. It's nothing to do with the law.
Yep.
You cannot prejudice a trial if there's been no actual charges levied, because there is no trial.
Starmer and the Labour government knew that if they had come out immediately and said, this is who it is, this is what we found under his bed, let alone all the failings leading up to it, that it would have potentially sent people over the edge in terms of their concerns about what's happening in Britain, in terms of people being here that are from other countries that have malintent. Now, if that's the case, well, then surely we should be thinking about A, who we let in and who we have let in over the last 20 or 30 years, and what we do about that going forward, and also what we do in terms of the people that are already here by way of deportation, and funding MI5 better so that they've got more resources, because I think, as it is, I think they're the number of people that they're scrutinising and watching right now is in the tens of thousands. And they haven't got the
50,000.
So let's talk about what the problem actually is, and then be able to fix it, not just by way of deportation, by the way, but in terms of resource, accountability, and so on. Rather than saying, well, let's not highlight the fact that this guy was black and comes from he's a second-generation immigrant, and his parents are from Somalia, from Rwanda. Rather than covering it up, you need to embrace and grab the problem so that you can solve the problem.
Totally.
And we're not doing that. We haven't learned any lessons at all from either the Nottingham killer or Manchester Arena.
This government's first instinct is to cover everything up and hope that nobody finds out, which has backfired on them every single bloody time they've done it. Complete planks. What is Starmer's worst moment is the poll today. Is it the 19 seconds that he spent laying some flowers in Southport? Is it the far-right thug speech where he threatened everybody with arrest, and not only arrest, charges and conviction, which is a bit unusual for somebody who's supposed to believe in upholding the principle of innocence or proven guilty. Rushing to that drinks party in Downing Street after visiting Southport for 19 seconds, or the one that's currently leading, being born. 65%, Starmer's worst moment. I mean, I think that's probably fair enough.
But you made a really good point. I know you've got Lucy on later, Lucy Connolly. When she was taken in and eventually charged and so on, I don't remember Keir Starmer standing up saying, you can't talk about Lucy Connolly because it might prejudice her trial.
No.
He did it with the Southport killer and others, but when it came to anyone that was, again, I would just say, on the
they're all guilty
side,
before they actually even had a trial.
Yeah.
And that's why they were all told to plead guilty. Don't worry, we'll let you off. No, they didn't. It was absolutely disgraceful. Kelvin McKenzie's in the house. He'll be joining us shortly. But before we let you go, Russell, I mean, we have obviously just spent a half an hour speaking about the Southport inquiry, but there are a couple of other stories to mention. One, which we're going to get into slightly later on with the Taxpayers Alliance. Massive story for those who care about the public sector.
Well, I care. I'm an elected councillor, and some of this stuff from the Taxpayers Alliance, they do this every year, don't they? The Town Hall.
It's the Town Hall rich list.
The kind of should be the list of shame, really. 4,700 people within council employ that are now on over £100,000 per annum. There were only 2,400 of them 5 years ago. So lots and lots of people had big pay rises. I've got a number one. I think you've got a number one as well. But my number one here is an unnamed employee of Staffordshire Council who was paid £457,000 in 2024-25. Bearing in mind the Prime Minister, who's obviously grossly overpaid given who he is, entitled to a salary of just £172,000. At my local council, Essex County Council, there's 53 council officers, not councillors, council officers, on over £100,000. And have services improved, do we think, across the council landscape over the last few years?
Well, not only have they not improved, but the council tax has actually gone up. Largely to
3,
pay
4, 5% a year
for all of these people. The one I like is the highest paid public sector worker in London. It turns out is not anybody in the mayor's office, believe it or not. It's the bloke that runs the Barbican Centre. For some reason, I don't know quite why. I'm just trying to find it here. He's on £373,000 a year to run effectively a theatre.
Can I give you a quick another one? Nesso, which is not a coffee brand, by the way, the National Energy System Operator, talking of high salaries. This is the organisation that last year paid £1.5 billion to owners of wind farms and solar farms to turn their systems off because they were overloaded with power. I kid you not, £1.5 billion paid to those companies because they were producing too much power at the wrong time. The answer apparently to that is that you need to now use your washing machine on a Sunday. I kid you not. But anyway, coming back to money, the chief exec of that particular pointless quango is on £500,000 a year. So 500 grand to tell you when to use your washing machine. You could not make this stuff up, could you?
I know, it is incredible. Absolutely remarkable stuff. Russell, good to see you. The other final one to mention, I suppose, is that apparently boring chit-chat is good for you. That's the story in The Sun, page 11. But that's not
None
what
of
we
that
do
here.
here.
None of
There's
that
none of
here.
that boring chit-chat here. It's not allowed. No, absolutely not. It's the Mike Graham Show. We are here, of course, until around about 9:45 or thereabouts. We've got lots of great big guests coming up. We've got the Taxpayers Alliance on to give us the detail of that rich list in the public sector. We've got Orla Minahane in as well. Sir Gerald Howarth is here. Lucy Connolly, of course, later on as well. And Kelvin Mackenzie joining us next after the news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. It's me, Edward Hughes, with your news. Former NATO chief Lord George Robertson has criticised the Starmer government for corrosive complacency on defence, warning the UK's national security is in peril amid the ongoing Iran conflict. The Prime Minister has stated Britain will not support any blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Rising fuel prices are hitting consumers hard, while Rachel Reeves is pushing the UK's growth strategy at the IMF summit. Britain's energy grid operators say the country has enough supply this summer despite Middle East tensions. In other headlines, an inquest found actor Warwick Davis's wife Samantha died just as hospital staff planned to discharge her. A former MOD clerk faces jail for stealing nearly £1 million in expenses fraud. Plans are underway to overhaul school dinners by removing high sugar and deep-fried foods. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
We're back. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show, 7:35. We've got lots and lots of stories. We haven't even talked about Donald Trump yet and the Middle East and the whole situation with the Pope, which is slightly more bizarre than anyone could ever have imagined, actually. But we'll get to that very shortly. There's also a couple of stories about migrants and the cost of all of that too. Kelvin Mackenzie's here. Very good morning to you, Kelvin.
Morning.
Shall we kick off with what we've been talking about for the best part of the first half an hour, really? A shocking report which has come out, which probably shouldn't shock anyone really, because what we knew was that nothing in the whole realm of containment for people like this in this country works. You know, the social services don't work, school system doesn't work, police don't work, nothing works.
You know why, don't you? I mean, you know why. Because we have a system in our country where nobody takes, in the state system, nobody takes responsibility for anything. I mean, for instance, I don't know how many teachers there are. I think there are about 600,000, but perhaps your viewers could tell me. Do you know, for discipline reasons, about 2 are fired every year, right? There is no sense. The answer in the state system is if we don't do anything, in a strange and odd way, it can't be our fault, and it will go away. And it never goes away. It ends up in this. Right? So it doesn't matter whether it's education, whether it's health, whether it's probation, whether it's the police, whether it's somebody. Nobody will say, actually, this is my responsibility. And you know what? The guy heading that inquiry said that. Now, he's now going to appoint. Now, you can be absolutely sure that idiot Starmer, I am so looking forward to May the 6th. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the utter humiliation of it, which is why, by the way, all this EU stuff is coming out. Because he's going to say, I'm the guy to deliver that. Anyway, moving that to one side. Right. And so so the chair has now said, I've had a look at this. It is beyond shocking. The parents are beyond scum. They are beyond scum. They see the knives in there. They know he's watching this. They know he's making poison in his bedroom, for God's sake, right? And he still doesn't say, do you think we ought to tell the authorities? Now, I ask myself, why is this? Are they just scum parents that could be anywhere in the world? Or is it something about Africa? Is it something about Rwanda? And by the way, why don't they go back there, and why don't they have children out there that do that to their lot and leave us alone?
Well, that's
just
part
leave
of the problem,
us
isn't
alone.
it? That's part of the problem. If you import people who come from places where that kind of activity goes on, you think there's suddenly going to be a complete change of attitude. You know, I've said it before. We've had, Rwandan war criminals running libraries in Lambeth, because they've been hired by the local authority. Because
probably hired by the Environment Secretary, who was the leader of bloody Lambeth Council.
Of course. But the point is that you cannot, in any psychiatrist will tell you, if you've grown up with parents who existed in a place where terrible things were happening and horrible violence was an everyday activity, then of course it's going to have some kind of effect on you. He was fascinated fascinated by murder and by mayhem and by extreme violence. And everybody knew it. For years they knew it, right? But the authorities said, oh, well, he's got autism, so, you know, it's more of a danger to himself than anybody else. Got it wrong. A woman tried to raise the issue in the school that he was in. She was accused of racial stereotyping because of the fact that he was black and he had a knife. And you go, well, there's no hope for us, is there? If these are the gatekeepers of our little girls in this country, then we are screwed.
We are. So
I nearly said
trouble,
another word
the
there.
trouble with the people. So you get into the state system. You learn very quickly that actually you can take any amount of time off for sickness. You can, as long as you don't put your head above the parapet, you will automatically get promoted, and you know the way to make the game work. I mean, for instance, you were talking earlier about local government pay raise, right? You know what the game is. Just stay there, and the way it'll work is like that. And this is what's happened in this case. Nobody says anything. If we don't say anything, everything will turn out to be right. Well, it didn't turn out to be right, did it? It turned out that there are 3 families who today, no other day will ever be the same again for them. Never be the same, right? They will never wake up thinking, oh, it's a sunny day, or we're going on holiday. They're thinking, I wish my daughter was with me. I wonder what my daughter would have made of this. There will never be the reason. And the reason for that is we never, ever take responsibility at a state level about what is happening to our people. And honestly, I am in favour of a moratorium on migration for, say, 5 years, 7 years. We've done our bit for the world. Okay, a lot of people have told a lot of lies to get here, and I don't blame them. If I were in Africa today, and I was going to get some huge, going to get a free house, and I'm going to get free money, I'd probably do it. But we have. Those 3 children will be alive today.
Pictures
did we not have
today.
migration?
That's France yesterday, right? The French police smiling, waving these characters off as they're all now here. Okay. Everyone in that picture on that boat, there's about 100 of them, and there's probably several other boats as well, all now here. More than 5,000 have made the journey so far this year. So that's 5,000. Even if you took a relatively kind of liberal sort of stance and said maybe only 1 in 10 of them is a bad guy, that's a lot of bad guys.
Well, I mean, you take 1 in 20. I tell you what, just take 1.
Yeah.
Just take 1. Because we've got enough scumbags in our country anyway who are white, okay? We don't need to overlay with other scumbags from around the world of whatever colour.
Yeah.
So this is really... No, I'm so old. I have been through so many inquiries of so many tragedies. And always when it involves the state, somebody should have done something. Actually, that call was never picked up. I thought that was somebody else's responsibility. Now, so this chairman now says, this is disgraceful. It was really horrendous. From now onwards, we're going to have somebody in charge.
Yeah.
Can I guarantee to you, I absolute guarantee to you, 5 years from today, there will be a report saying that the bloke was in charge, who will have come from exactly the same background, has came from the collection of creeps who failed to do anything this time, right, will now be chastised for failing to bring together the different agencies.
But it's also worse than that, I think, Kelvin, because what we have now is a society, particularly in the public sector, where they set up frameworks. I mean, look at Starmer yesterday. We're having another summit about the Gulf. Why? What's he going to have a summit for?
What's he going to add to it?
Somebody said on Twitter to me, he said, there are more summits than Sherpa Tenzing, this guy. You know, he has all these summits, but nothing happens. They set up a process. And I heard somebody say it already about Southport. Oh, well, there was a process, but it wasn't followed. So all of these bozos in the public sector think, let's set up a framework, let's set up a process. Nobody does anything, but don't worry, we've got a process. That's ridiculous.
I heard some retired guy saying that actually Lancashire County Council had this process, so nobody followed it. So this guy who's going to end up being in charge of being the point man when there's big issues or like that, by the way, he'll be he or she who will have come from exactly the same background. Do you know who it'll be? 5 years today, I guarantee it'll be Bridget Phillipson, right? A complete useless numpty, right? And absolutely 101%. There is the most stunning, best ever piece I have ever read on X, right? I'll bore you all later on with it. Everybody who watching this show this morning. You must go on it and read it all, and you will find yourself nodding to the point where your head actually will fall off. There's a guy in there who has nailed the state and the kind of creeps that we have employed there at huge money to the nth degree. I'll talk about it later on, but honestly, this was the best thing I've ever read.
Is this the guy that says that she's the thickest member of the cabinet and it's quite a low bar or something like that? Is that
No, he makes another point actually, and I'm telling you what, I'm going to I would just.
While you look for it, let me read you this. You carry on. This is Keir Starmer's tweet yesterday, which so enraged Lucy Connolly that we wanted to get her on to talk about it, because this is what Keir Starmer actually had the balls to say yesterday when this report came out from Sir Adrian Fulford, right? Yeah. He says, this brutal, senseless murder of Bibi, Elsie and Alice marked one of the darkest moments in our country's history. The report today is truly harrowing and profoundly disturbing. It sets out systematic failures that led to this terrible event. I've been overwhelmed by the bravery and determination of their families, and while nothing will ever bring these three little girls back, I'm determined to make the fundamental changes needed to keep the public safe. I will do everything I can to honour the memory of Bibi, Elsie and Alice. And you know what Lucy said? Her first reaction was, how dare you? How dare you? You skipped to Southport, lobbed a wreath in the direction of all the other tributes, ran away and called everyone far right that was heartbroken and angry. And that's exactly what he did. And he hasn't mentioned the cover-up, the fact that they tried very hard not to tell us who this kid was for the longest possible time.
To the threat, by the way.
Even though they knew who he was and what he'd done and how he was a terrorist.
I'm amazed that you didn't end up in jail yourself. To be honest with you, the only reason they don't take on the media, right, but they do take on the Lucy Connollys of this world, right, who I wonder where a barrister is in the pantheon of great legal minds, right? Right? It's because they were scared that you could push back. Right? So the media can push back. But can I just read you? I won't bother him. Right? His Twitter handle is Anglo Futurism Capital LP.
Okay.
If you go on me and then you go on there, right? The British state is run by people who have never been fired, never missed a number, never had a client scream at them, never stayed up until 3 a.m. working on a deal or repricing a book because Tokyo opened badly. They have never experienced consequence, ever. That is the most single important fact in British life. The pipeline is so uniform and mediocre, it scarcely needs describing. School, PPP or adjacent, civil servant fast stream or think tank research role, spell as a local councillor to appear grounded, then a safe seat and a red box before 40. At no point the market ever called them a moron.
Yeah.
But honestly, you must read this. There is no consequence. So what will be the consequence for these people who a judge has been seriously shocked by? What will be the consequence? Job loss? Oh, no, nothing to do with me, God. I sat round the table and we agreed to do X and Y and it never happened. Right? What is consequence? There is no consequence. For instance, you do something wrong, boom, you're fired. Right? I do something wrong on multiple occasions, by the way, I'm fired. Excellent. By the way, on this basis, I should be the Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
But
if you'd worked in the public sector, right, you'd probably be now, one of the great champions of some NHS health authority, earning £750,000 a year. And it wouldn't matter what you did because you just know the right people and you just sit there, you don't have to do anything.
Well, actually, you'd probably almost certainly to survive, you'd have to say the opposite to what you were thinking. Right? And if there was any chance of any innovation, so I had a relative who worked at the NHS. She said it was the biggest laugh ever. She was like in the administration side. She said what used to happen was every week they'd have a meeting about some project they planned, right? And they'd have the meeting, it lasted about 2 hours. And this would go on week after week after week. After 18 months, you know what their decision was?
Go on.
The decision was that we should hire a consultant to actually do the work. They said they were all much too busy, and then they're getting somebody else to do the work. She said, honestly, and by the way, she's a lefty, right, this lady, right? She's a lefty. She said it was an absolute laugh. There was nobody under any circumstances doing any work.
Imagine this character here, because I'm going to take you back to the rich list, because I've now finally found the section that I was looking for
your own
before.
name, are you?
I'm sadly not employable by the public sector on the grounds that I tend to say what I think.
No.
You know, therefore I'm completely disqualified. The highest remunerated council employee in the east of England, right? Imagine what this job entails: assistant chief executive, not chief executive, assistant chief executive.
That involves agreeing with the chief executive.
Cambridge Council, £330,101.
No.
That is a straight up, and worse than that is the one in London. The highest, the highest remunerated council employee is somebody called Mr. C. Spencer. I'll leave you to worry about what the C stands for. City of London Council, £373,000 a year. He runs the Barbican Centre.
Well, they are.
I mean, you go and see sort of Nepalese drumming or something when you go to the Barbican Centre. It's a very right-on kind of theatre space, isn't it?
I do know somebody associated with it, actually, yeah.
Well, I mean, they're obviously very well paid. I mean, can you imagine running... I mean, at the moment, for example, the theatre business is in the doldrums, really, because people can't afford to go out.
Yeah.
This guy's getting nearly 400 grand to run a sort of what I would call a bit of a fringe organisation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, no. But it's rather nice. I don't know if you've ever sat in it. So you'll be pleased to know that the state is funding all this all over the place.
Fantastic.
It's normally a way. If you're associated with the Barbican, it's the way of getting a gong or a knighthood or a damehood or something like that.
Yeah.
But you see, this is your problem. You see, there are a number of reasons why you won't be coming. You won't be coming Sir Michael Graham or Lord Graham of Vauxhall.
No.
And there's a number of reasons. Every year I get the FT.
Right.
Love the FT. Round about January the 1st. Right. I go down the very, very long list of people who've got CBEs, MBEs, damehoods,
and you're not on it again.
Looking for my own name.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I am amazed. The people that I do know who have actually received them.
Yeah.
Look, you have to come from it's no use putting your peas on the side of your knife, right? Anything like that, boom, you're out.
Right.
Anytime you're involved in any controversy at all, unless you're involved in a political controversy,
on the right side of it. Yes, on the right side of it. Yeah.
Well, you can even make some huge political error and lose the country a Gordon Brown type figure.
Yeah.
You can lose the country, 20 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion quid. Nobody minds. You do that in any other form of life, then boom, there goes your gong. But look, at the end of it all, this is beyond a tragedy, but it shines a spotlight on what is wrong. What is wrong with our state agencies? These people, I mean, schools.
Yeah.
I mean, that lady who raised it originally, I am amazed she doesn't come forward and then name the people who then attacked her.
Well, she actually has, because her name is head teacher Joanne Hodgson. She's already from a special school, because he was sent to this special school after being kicked out of regular school for carrying a knife,
seriously?
right? Yeah. So he was kicked out at the age of 13, expelled from mainstream education. He ended up in this place called the Acorn School, a pupil referral unit, right? She says...
a nightmare job that would be.
When she tried to raise the risk he posed to others, she said that a mental health worker called Samantha Steed, who presumably worked in the school, accused her of racially stereotyping the kid as a black boy with a knife. Well, guess what? He was a black boy with a knife. How is that racial stereotyping? That was a fact.
And so what has happened to that lady?
Well, that's a good question, because we don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Well, I tell you, what's her name?
Her name is Samantha Steed.
Okay, Samantha Steed. If you're watching, or one of your relatives is watching, or one of your friends has watched it, or a member of the family is watching, why don't you call in to us and explain why you said this? And since that attack, which was in 2024,
July.
24.
Yeah, it was right after Starmer became Prime Minister.
Have you benefited financially? What you pay? Have you got promotion? Or have you been disciplined for what you said? Or how do you feel about being publicly named and shamed? And is that something you'd like to come and push back against? And what role did you then play in trying to make sure that this potential killer was going to be safe and wasn't going to do what he eventually ends out to do? So that's a serious
question. Well, I can tell you, Sir Adrian Fulford yesterday said that she was unwise to have raised the issue of racial stereotyping.
Oh, unwise.
Unwise.
Well, why wasn't he much stronger and say, well, not only was she unwise, right, she was completely bloody wrong.
Exactly.
Right? Because the very
Exactly.
issues which you raised, which in this case, by the way, I don't care what damn colour they are. I don't care what damn colour they are. Let's just take even if we take the colour issue, the race issue out of it, here we have somebody who everybody identified was a potential killer, certainly mentally deranged, and an obsession with violence. You would have thought somebody would have said, we either do something or that boy is going to kill.
Yeah.
And actually, all the state agencies, all their money, you're going to look at look at your council bill. Just look at your council bill and your tax bill over the last couple of years, or even before that. It's gone upwards. These people are getting good money, secure jobs, pay rise every year, possibly promotion. This thing happens and nobody gets fingered, right? Yeah? The parents, disgusting people who weren't parents. They weren't entitled to call themselves parents, and under legal duress, they actually started to agreeing that they had things to apologise for, right? Why is nobody that we fund, nobody stood up and said, yeah, I made an error?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, let's get to that question. We've got Ola Minahan to talk to in a moment. But before we talk to her, a couple of super chats, Pooch, I think, on the subject. This from David. When is someone going to mention Green King are closing 300 pubs and restaurants with thousands of jobs going? Well, we haven't seen that story. We will get to it, I'm sure, David. Thanks for alerting us to it. One from LTL. Morning, Mike. The problem is no one is held to account for these catastrophic mistakes, or is it ignorance because the race card will be shown? Well, there's all manner of reasons why. Mike, you and Kelvin are on fire together, says Cindy. Thank you, Cindy. One more final one from Matthew. Poem of the day, The Beginnings by Rudyard Kipling. I'm not familiar with that. But we'll check it out, see what it says. But let's talk to Ola Minahan now, who is, of course, from the Pink Ladies organisation and Restore Britain as well. Ola, very good morning to you.
Morning. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, well, we're a bit wound up today, I'm afraid, Ola, because as I'm sure all of us are, not least because of Starmer and the ridiculous statement he put out yesterday, which upset an awful lot of people, including Lucy Connolly, who we got on later on. Kelvin makes the point that, nobody will be held responsible for this. As usual, it's another cataclysmic failure by the system. So what are we going to do?
There are so many issues here. First of all, the parents. Now, we have to remember that a child is under the parent's supervision until the child is 18 years old. So my view would be that if the parents failed to look after and oversee that child's behaviour, they are absolutely at fault as well. And my view is that they should stand trial, because their absolute failings as parents have meant that other parents have now lost their children. So they should absolutely be taken to trial for that. There was also, and I don't know if it's been mentioned, so forgive me if that's the case, but there have been many reports that he had deliveries coming to his house, of knives and poisons and other things. And they knew that. And the mother said that she found this stuff under his bed. Now, at what point do you not think, I need to report that? Yeah. It's unbelievable, the fact that two parents, a mother and a father, could live in a house with somebody with such outrageously unstable behaviours and not think that it was their duty.
I don't think it's right to say they didn't report any of it, but I think the fact is they didn't report all of it, right? Because we know that he was, for example, he was referred to Prevent 3 times, partially because of things that had happened in his school. There was an event on a bus where he pulled a knife out on a bus, and he was reported to the police for that. And I think they did try to contact the authorities. So I'm not saying that completely ameliorates them from guilt, because it doesn't, because they clearly didn't do enough. But they did try at certain points. But nobody really did what they should have done, which was to take him into some kind of custody. I actually heard somebody yesterday arguing the case that, well, the trouble is you can't just arrest people if they haven't committed any crime, because it's a breach of their freedom of speech. And I'm going, I could not give a toss about that.
Nonsense. But Mike, this isn't like in 2024 as well. Barnaby and Grace, 2 students at Nottingham University, and the other fella, the grandfather, They were all stabbed to death by a man that was known to authorities.
Yeah.
He was also a paranoid schizophrenic. He was allowed out. He should have gone from the prison to some kind of hospitalization. He wasn't. He was allowed to roam the streets. There are so many people with mental illness that should be kept in some kind of secure unit that are allowed to walk the streets in this country. There is a complete breakdown of that middle of the road care from prison to being let out into the community. I see it every day. The other day I was walking down the street and there was this absolute madman running around in the street, trying to get his clothes off, running over to women, running into shops, and he's just allowed to get away with it. Now the police should not have to maintain or manage that. That should be dealt with. What happened? They got rid of all the asylums. They got rid of all the well, not all of them, but a lot of the mental units. And so people are in the community, and it's supposed to be care in the community, but there is no care. They're just allowed to.
No, you're right. I mean, I walk around, anytime I walk around in London, I don't know if you find it the same, Kelvin, you see these nutters, right? Yeah. Some of them are begging on the street or shouting or running towards you, or, you have to be like on your guard. And that's me as a man talking. If you're a woman, it must be even more terrifying.
It is terrifying, and you see every day if you're on X or you're on Instagram, and obviously this isn't in the mainstream media as we know, but you see these men walking around, mainly men, exposing themselves, urinating in public. I'm sorry, but unless
Peter Mandelson, for instance,
indeed, the level, and maybe these people aren't lunatics at all. Maybe they're just been dragged up somewhere, but ultimately. We have to get to a point where we have some kind of control. My sister works in the NHS. She says that the amount of time that is spent in A&E on people with mental health issues is off the clock. The amount of police that you see that come in and have to stand guard so that the nurses don't get attacked. We've got a complete breakdown in mental health services in this country. The criminal justice system is a mess. The police can't cope with the amount of people that they have to manage, let alone ones with mental health issues. And then you have the authorities who won't deal with cases that they should deal with because they don't want to offend someone.
Right.
I mean, going back to this, I watched yesterday Chris Phillips in the House of Commons saying this, as you've just explained, they didn't want to stir up, they didn't want to upset anybody by saying that he was a black boy with a knife. He was a black boy with a knife.
Yeah, several knives.
A yellow boy with a knife
and a
blue
machete.
boy with a knife. Yeah, it's utterly ridiculous that we are in a situation where lives are being ruined and lost, and little girls' lives in this case, because we do not want to offend.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'm offended. You're offended. Everybody's offended. So you know what? Get to grips with the situation. And then Keir Starmer coming out with his nonsense about lessons will be learned. How many lessons are going to be learned before we do something with the state of this country?
Well, I wonder if he's going to learn a lesson about cover-ups and whether he shouldn't have actually pretended not to know who this assailant was. I don't say his name on this show because I don't like to give him the credence for it.
No,
but,
exactly.
This killer, this boy killer, was known to the authorities. He was known long before the public got told about it. The reason there was disquiet and the reason people started rioting was because they were sure that he was some kind of illegal migrant. And because the government refused to say who he was, and the only clue that they gave out was that he was from Wales and that he'd been in a choir at some point or other, we were completely misled. He told a load of lies in order to protect what he thought was a community of people who were more important than British people.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. 2 days ago, and I'm not going to go into the details because I don't know the details enough, but a girl on Saturday night in her 20s was gang raped in London. Well, in Epsom.
In Epsom, yeah.
Now, in Epsom. Now, they know that there were 4 or 5 men. Now, why have they not just come out and said the facts? They know the facts. The girl has apparently given identity of these men. So just come out and say who they are.
Right.
Because all you're going to do, the more smoke and mirrors, the more angry people get, the more that they jump to conclusions. Now, they may have been 5 white boys. They may be 5 black boys. They may be 5 migrant boys. It doesn't matter. Just say who they are, because the public have a duty to know who they are dealing with and who is out there, who is yet to be arrested, so that people can be vigilant. It is our right. So
and if I had a daughter, right, or a mother or a sister who lived in Epsom, I would want to know those things, right? Of
course you would.
It's a public service,
it's your
right?
right to know. Yeah, absolutely. And all that happens is you create this smoke and mirrors. You create, that nothing to see here. People get, of course, they then get more suspicious. Just be honest with the British people. We know that we've got a rape epidemic in this country. We know that there's huge problems with undocumented men. Stop lying about it. We all know it's happening. Be honest and say, we know there's a problem. We are looking at dealing with it. I mean, that's nonsense as well, because they're still coming in hundreds a day. But the point is, stop gaslighting the British people. We are here. We are taxpayers. We are paying to be secure and kept safe by your authorities, and you are failing to do that. Simple.
Exactly
it's wrong
right.
on every level.
Exactly right. You've got a Pink Ladies event coming up. Let's give it a little plug. Tell us where it's going on.
Thank you. Next Friday, the 24th, outside the Home Office at 12 o'clock. We have so many parents joining us whose families, daughters have been affected by the illegal migrant crisis. We have the family coming from Epping, which was the original hotel that the protest started outside last year. We've got so many people that are coming to me and saying, I want to be part of next Friday. So if you are a parent, you are a grandparent, you are just a person who is concerned about the crisis in this country, please join us at 12 o'clock next week outside the Home Office. You don't have to wear pink. You can wear pink because it's a Pink Ladies protest, but we just want as many people as we can to come and support us, please.
Brilliant. Orla, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
Do you know what I think will be good for this show? Is actually if we have somebody from the left on.
Well, they won't come on, though.
No,
they won't come on.
Saying the opposite. No. Look.
They won't come on.
I could find somebody to come on to actually argue against the parents being returned to Rwanda, right? Against the parents ever being arrested. Be in favour of the state, because the funny thing is the arguments are compelling to the point where an independent judge has decided the arguments are compelling.
Yeah.
But there will be people in our country, and they will be voting, right, in 29 and again in a couple of weeks' time, right? They will be voting in exactly the opposite direction.
Yeah.
But we don't know those people, and I would like to hear them uninterrupted, right, to say what they think, because to start
the trouble is, if they came on this show, they wouldn't be uninterrupted, I'm afraid, because I interrupt them all the time.
Right. No, but in this case, you're going to have to calm your natural anger and actually allow them to kill themselves within their own mouths.
Yes.
Right?
Well, you might. I don't know whether you saw it, but last year I had an interview with a guy called Lord Carlisle, who was a bloke who was in charge.
No, I know Lord. No, I don't know him,
of Prevent, right?
Yeah.
And he got very exercised with me, and I'm afraid I had to teach him one or two lessons about, I actually said to him at one point.
You mean Lord Carlisle KC, you mean?
Yeah, I said, Lord Carlisle, just because you call yourself a lord does not mean you get to lord it over people like me, because he was like, I thought you were a journalist, why don't you let me finish? I was like, well, I won't let you finish because you're talking absolute rubbish. Prevent is not a name you should give to an organisation. Hang on, no, but go and look at it when you've got some time, because it's a fantastic.
No, I'm not against you giving people a hard time. I think in this case, I can't understand what the arguments would be on the other side.
Yeah.
Right? I can obviously understand our arguments. A judge makes fantastic arguments. We all support them. What do minorities really think about?
I can give you their arguments because I know exactly what they are. They will tell you that just because of one bad apple, you should not carry the whole barrel and put it on a boat and send it back to Rwanda. They'll say that there's plenty of people that came here from Rwanda who are doing perfectly good service in the NHS, working in Lambeth Library or wherever it is. And it would be wrong to categorise them all as potential terroristic killers. That's a perfectly good argument. But that doesn't mean that you should then therefore have absolutely no safeguards because you're frightened that some of them might be. I can make any argument you want.
Right. Look, I've been listening to inquiries like this. This is beyond shocking. The idea that those three little girls, right, it's almost impossible to even talk about. Right. However, I've been listening to this Literally. I mean, I've been a journo for 50 odd years,
Yeah.
right? I've
Probably
been a
more, actually.
Actually, you're
Call
right.
it, try and go for 60.
Yeah, but honestly, when you look like me, your body's a temple, you know. Certainly.
Well, it is now. It used to be.
Yeah, that's right. It used to be a cathedral, and now it's a small parish church. That's what happens when you give up alcohol, by the way, folks.
Yes.
You also become enormously boring. What happens when you give up alcohol is that when you go into a party or something, and somebody says, "What would you like to drink?" and you say, "Iced water, please,"
Right.
like that. It's like the red arrows, right?
Have you not gone down the route of
people go like that?
Have you not gone down that route of I'll have some non-alcoholic wine?
I haven't tried that.
Have you not?
I have tried it. It is revolting.
It is revolting, but worse than that, it's just as expensive as real wine, which is a massive racket, right?
Yeah.
And I actually bought some by mistake once during COVID.
You bought non-alcoholic
because
wine?
I was in my local Waitrose, as I tend to be, right? And they had a display, as they sometimes do, and ridiculously they put the non-alcoholic wine and the alcoholic wine in the same display, and it was all rosé.
What,
so
were you pissed when you pulled it out?
No, I wasn't. I assumed it was regular wine. I didn't think I have to check that it's got alcohol in it. So I bought about 6 bottles, right, just for the night, and got home, and 3 of them were non-alcoholic. And so in the end, I had to sort of mix the two because I thought, well, I'm not going to take them back.
So you mixed the alcoholic wine with the was that revolting?
It was slightly less alcoholic. That's all. I mean,
is that what it was?
So it was actually not bad because it meant I didn't get quite so.
Can I ask you this? On a normal night out, right? On a normal night out, right? And I'm doing this from my kind of, you know, I'm a Trump-like figure now. Somebody sitting on the cloud, looking down on, trying to help the sinners out, right? On a normal night out, if you gave it a good, you know, if you were out with some mates, you were having rather a good time, how much would you consume?
I mean, it's difficult to know because when you're sharing, you know, you don't know.
You don't count it. No.
You don't, you know. But I mean, normally, if I'm out for a decent dinner, 2 bottles of wine between 2 people, I would say easily.
Oh right.
And I mean, I could often drink 2 bottles of wine just at home. I mean, I'd have to go out.
You could drink 2 bottles on your own. Okay. Well, what state would you be in at the end of it?
It's when I get to the 3rd one, it starts to get a bit tricky.
It starts
if you open the
bit
3rd
hazy.
one, if you start to open the 3rd one.
That is, do you know what? Single-handedly, you are now propping up the entire drinks industry, which is in some degree of trouble, isn't it? Let's be honest.
I mean, again, I was in Waitrose, funnily enough, yesterday, and they've constantly
buying a couple of dozen bottles of.
I was buying a few supplies for the house. You know, I needed some bananas, for example. I eat a banana every day. It keeps me healthy. I bought some onions. I bought some. I had a craving for corned beef. Bought some corned beef. I fancied a corned beef sandwich.
Do you know what? You lead such an exciting life.
It is.
Away
I mean,
from
people think that I'm some kind of, you know, member of the cognoscenti. I'm really not.
No,
you know?
Well, I'm
because
not
also I
surprised.
don't go out now much at night because I've got to be in here at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'm up at 5, so I don't tend to go out at night anymore.
So your drinking is now within the house, basically?
It tends to be in the afternoons if I do. I don't drink now 2 days a week. So Sunday and Monday I don't drink because it sets off the week well. But then usually by Tuesday I need a drink. It starts
starting on the downward.
Starts to go down.
Your partner in crime, of course, is my brother, Craig.
I haven't seen him for a while because he's been otherwise occupied.
Yes,
But he's quite disciplined though, because he and I will meet up for a drink in the afternoon, and we'll maybe sit for about an hour and a half.
Well, you say he's disciplined. He tells me a story. That having been out on the source with you, right? He arrived. He was completely hammered. Right, okay. He arrives at the other end of Waterloo Station.
Yes.
Right. Platform 18. He has to get the train from platform 3.
Right.
Okay. He feels very ill. He feels very ill. So he starts walking one step at a time, right? He arrives at 6:10 at night, okay?
Yeah.
He walks very, very slowly.
He said he had to sort of cling to the wall.
Yes, correct. He eventually, next to where you get advice on why your train is late, or the fact the driver has decided to stay in bed, right? For whatever reason, he goes into that area. He has to sit down there. He arrived at 6:10, right? He got the 8:12. So to cover 120 yards, it took him just north of 2 hours.
And he'd been better off on his hands and knees, to be honest. He could have got there
quicker.
quicker.
It would have been faster. Right. Well, he probably did spend
He also told me, because he'd come actually to a show that we were doing in the afternoon in a pub. It was during during the COVID times, and they reopened the pubs. And so we went to do a show from this local pub around the back of London Bridge Station. And he came, and I mean, it was nothing to do with me that he got as pissed as that, but he fell in somebody's garden, I think, on the way out as well, on his way to the tube, right? And he did one of those where you fall into the garden, you can't, like a tortoise, you sort of on your back, you can't get up. I think he said he lay there for about 15 minutes.
And nobody cared.
And nobody cared.
And they just said, oh, it's Craig McKenzie, I won't bother.
Yeah, seen him before. Anyway, listen, we must move on. We've got lots to do. Have we got any super chats?
We've got a guest here now.
We've got a guest. This is Sir Gerald Howarth, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is Sir Gerald Howarth, former Defence Minister in one of the last Tory governments. I say that with some alacrity, Sir Gerald. Very good to see you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Good to see you as well, Mike.
I mean, I guess we haven't yet talked on the show this morning. We've been on since 7 o'clock. We haven't yet mentioned really much about the blockade of the Straits of Hormuz. Nobody seems to quite know exactly how it's working. And Donald Trump appears to be not entirely sure of where it's all going to end up.
Well, nor are we. I mean, it is an extraordinary situation that we have the American president having spent several weeks quite clear preparing for this assault on Iran, clearly with regime change in mind, albeit that that has perhaps not been declared and certainly isn't being declared now. And it seems to me that we have now ended up with the worst of both worlds. We have strengthened one of the most evil regimes in the world, who are calling the shots by holding the world to ransom through their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. There's something like 2,000 ships with oil and other vital items like fertilizer holed up in the Persian Gulf, unable to reach their destinations, forcing up prices all around the world. I mean, it is catastrophic, and still these evil people are in place. And of course, they will be far more determined now to develop the nuclear weapons, which are the real source of danger for all of us, not just for the people of Iran, not just for the people in the Middle East, but for us in the United Kingdom and in Europe and the United States as well.
And what about Sir Keir Starmer and his role in all of this? Because he seems to think that the answer to everything is to organise another bleeding summit where he's going to sort of gather another sort of coalition of the willing and people who haven't really got many weapons to speak of and come up with some kind of plan which nobody really understands.
No, I think that having played Trump fairly carefully and I thought actually rather astutely at the outset, I think all he's done now is to upset the United States to such a degree that he has highlighted our inadequacy and the idea that we could not send one ship to the Eastern Mediterranean. I mean, it's humiliating for all of us in the United Kingdom, particularly those of us who have been involved in defence, and it must be humiliating for those who serve in uniform today that we couldn't get one of the world's most advanced anti-aircraft destroyers in the world, the Type 45. We couldn't get it out to the Middle East to go and defend Cyprus. And it is in our interest, a point that President Trump makes about America not relying on Middle Eastern oil because they have their own. We are dependent upon oil and gas from the Middle East, as are so many other countries. It is therefore in our interests to open up the Straits of Hormuz. But of course, we know that Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party are absolutely scared witless that as a result of the Denton and Gorton by-election, they saw their Muslim vote hemorrhaging to the Greens. And therefore they're desperate not to upset the Muslim vote in the United Kingdom. And this is a very serious constitutional issue.
Well, I mean, Lord Robertson, I don't know if you've seen, has written a piece in the Financial Times this morning in which he, as a former head of NATO and a former Defence Minister, Defence Secretary of State, I think, under Blair, says that Starmer's complacent about defence. His lack of cash for the defence budget has put the UK in peril. And he's basically said that he doesn't know what he's doing.
I totally agree. I mean, Lord Robertson is a friend of mine. We both serve on the board of the British Forces Foundation, which sends top entertainers to the front line to entertain the troops. So he and I have worked together for a couple of decades, in fact. And I know him well. I'm for a former Labour Defence Secretary, former Secretary General of NATO, to make these these really, really serious accusations against the government. This is a seminal moment. And he makes another important point, that the welfare budget is ballooning, and the defence budget shows no sign of increasing despite what the Prime Minister says. And a very interesting statistic, Mike, in 1982, we were spending 5% of GDP on defence and 3.5% on welfare. Today, we are spending just over 2% on defence and 11.9% on welfare. Lord Robertson has highlighted this point. It cannot go on. I've been talking to my son-in-law this morning. He's the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, James Cartledge, and the Tories have come up with a number of ideas. First and foremost, reinstate the two-child benefit cap, because that would raise £3 billion, half of which would go to reducing the national debt, but the other half would go to defence. Releasing money from other defence budget, other research budgets to defence, and changing the National Wealth Fund into a defence bank to support innovative British defence capabilities, which at the moment SMEs are just finding it more sensible to relocate abroad. This is very, very serious, Mike. And the Tories have come up, this is a start, come up with these ideas. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, she's offered to discuss these with the Prime Minister, see if they can work together, and all Labour MPs did was to laugh at her in the chamber yesterday. I don't think people realise just how serious the situation is, and I hope that Lord Robertson's remarks today, saying that the UK's security is in peril, I mean, this is very, very serious indeed. People need to wake up. We face multiple threats, not just from Iran, but from Russia. We were unable to intercept a Russian ship. Apparently we spent a month shadowing Russian ships which were surveying our undersea cables, vital for connecting our economy with other countries, internet cables and so on. And we just appear to have let the Russians survey these cables, presumably so that they could attack them in time of war. And we let a Russian ship, a shadow Russian tanker, go through the channel completely with impunity. I mean, it beggars belief that we have become so unbelievably weak as a result of this government. And another point that Lord Robertson made, the vandalism of the Treasury. And Rachel Reeves, not only is she utterly incompetent in respect of the management of the economy, but I think that she is behaving in a quite disreputable fashion in failing to produce the funds for the defence investment programme, which was promised in the autumn and still has not been delivered, and was, of course, a vital follow-up to the defence review led by General Richard Barrons and Lord Robertson.
Can I make a point? By the way, I love your stat, by the way. I've never heard the stat, the 2% and the 11% stat. And you'll see that again. That's a great stat. But this is my question for the Tories, since it's all in the family in your household.
It is.
Why would you, as a former defence politician, would you have joined with Trump in doing something which is in our nation's interest and the globe's interest in attacking Iran?
Well, first and foremost, Trump did not consult. Trump does not consult. And for Trump just to tell allies what to do, and you have a defense or war minister in America and a vice president who think that Britain and other European countries have done nothing since 1945 militarily, completely forgetting we supported them in the Iraq war and in Afghanistan and shed a lot of lives in so doing. But I do take the view that the transatlantic alliance is extremely important. And when I supported the second Gulf War, I did so in part because I felt it was important that Britain should stand alongside the United States. And I think we should have stood alongside the United States. This is the most evil regime in Iran imaginable, and they have a determination to create a nuclear weapon. When I was a defense minister, I had a classified briefing. Obviously, I can't tell you what was the briefing told me, but it was about Iran. At the end of which I turned to the Chief of Defense Intelligence and said, if what you're telling me is true, what on earth are we doing negotiating with these people? This is incredibly serious. They are persecuting their own people. They are a menace in the Middle East, in their region, because they are funding these terrorist groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, to the tune of $16 billion so far. And they threaten the rest of us with this nuclear program. And what we're left with now, it seems, is the nuclear program will be reinvigorated by mad mullahs. They've got a stranglehold on the world economy by closing the Straits of Hormuz. And there doesn't seem to be an intelligent, thought-out game plan by the United States. And I do wonder what their military have been doing. They are the most powerful military in the world. But what have they been doing in planning what was a very, very significant major operation?
Well, if you ask them that question, Sir Gerald, they would say we've completely destroyed the Navy. We've taken away most of the leaders that were running Iran for a while. And they do consult. They consult with Israel and they consult with the Gulf states. And I think one of the reasons they don't consult so much with the Europeans at the moment anyway, and I take your point about what Trump said, I think Trump is a guy you have to learn about and you have to deal with in whichever way is most beneficial for us, right? And the reason he says the things that he says is that he's not surrounded by anyone other than yes men who say you shouldn't say that. You know, like the situation with the, the picture of him as Jesus Christ. You'd think that he's a bit like a talk show host without a producer. Every idea is a great idea. Let's just go and do it. And nobody goes, hang on a minute, that's probably not wise. So I think that it's wrong to say he doesn't consult with anyone. He consults with people who I think he sees as relevant to him. And let's face it, Britain right now, militarily, is not relevant to anything that's going on in the Middle East. And we've got one ship there. We sent HMS Dragon, which is now being fixed because it doesn't work. It's hopeless, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing we can do, really, apart from agreeing to let him use the bases in terms of military strength.
Well, of course we could let him use the bases, but initially the Prime Minister refused to let him use the bases.
And that was a mistake, I think.
This Prime Minister, along with his Attorney General, Lord Hermer, and people like Philip Sands, they are obsessed with international law. They place international law above the interests of the British people. That is completely and utterly unacceptable. To come back to your point, yes, it's entirely fair. The Iranian Air Force, the Iranian Navy have been eradicated, but they are still firing ballistic missiles at Israel and the Gulf states. And yes, I think he may well have consulted with some of the Gulf states. I think Oman was actually very keen to try to continue the negotiations. And Oman, of course, is an extremely important ally of the United Kingdom. They are great, great friends of ours, and very important that we maintain those relationships. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm afraid, Mike, you're right. The fact is that in this context, soft power is utterly meaningless if you have no hard power, and we are seriously lacking. Sir Ben Wallace, who's former Secretary of State for Defence, talked about our having hollowed out the armed forces. But Mike, if I can say, I'm going to throw this back to the British people. At the end of the Second World War, before he died, Wing Commander Guy Gibson, VC, DFC, DSO, he said that the British people are likely to want, at the end of the war, to stop spending the money on defence and spend it on other things. I paraphrase to be brief. And we are in a situation where, following the end of the Cold War, the British people and others all felt that there ought to be a peace dividend, i.e. we reduce the proportion of money we spend on defence and spend it on welfare and hospitals and other things. And we are now paying a massive price for that. Because you cannot build up the armed forces with the speed that's necessary. And again, this is what General Sir Richard Barrons was saying on another program earlier this morning. I won't mention which program it was because it wasn't yours, Mike.
Shocking.
But nevertheless, it was shocking, absolutely shocking. But nevertheless, he made the point that we haven't got time. You can't spend 10, 20 years developing a product. And I have two criticisms. One at industry. Industry's got to get a culture of speed. The SMEs are brilliant. The people manufacturing the drones are absolutely superb. But the big companies like BAE Systems have got to change the culture. They have got to speed up production. They've got to speed up design. And the armed forces themselves, they have got to wake up and understand that they have got to speed up the processes. There's apparently a subsea drone company, i.e. an autonomous underwater system, developed in the United Kingdom. They can't even test it in British waters because it's taking weeks to get permission to operate these things off the Plymouth Sound.
Right.
For God's sake, we need to wake up, and the British people need to wake up. Because if there is a war, if we are dragged into some kind of wider military conflagration, your lives are going to be pretty miserable, and your taxes are not going to be spent on the things you want them spent on. They're going to be spent on simply defending our country and defending our freedom. So everybody's got to wake up. But so long as this government is in office with this vacillating prime minister, a Chancellor of the Exchequer who's utterly and completely incompetent and has the wrong priorities and fails to get the officials in the Treasury to understand the imperative of prioritizing defense, we're in trouble. But the cavalry is there. Kemi Badenoch is doing a great job as leader of the opposition. My son-in-law is doing a great job as Shadow Secretary of State.
And the cavalry without any
the
horses,
cavalry is
I'm
coming in
afraid.
from over the hill.
Yeah, but they need to get some more horses and a few more weapons in charge. But Sir Gerald, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Sir Gerald Howarth there. The problem is that nobody in this country, Kelvin, has got any faith whatsoever in this government having any kind of defence capability or strategy. We haven't got any strategy. Have another summit.
We've only got £1.
Yeah.
Okay. We've only got £1.
Right.
Okay. Every family knows this, right? And how you spend it. So that was a fantastic stat there.
Yeah.
2%. The 2% on welfare went to 11%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, over 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. So here we go. Okay. I don't know whether you've been following. There was a fantastic piece in the Spectator on last week. In which they'd had a good look at how our money is being spent in welfare. Do you know that if you go to the Tower of London, right, and you've got a universal credit kind of, all you need is a PDF, by the way, I'm told, okay? Instead of paying 111 quid for a family of four, you pay £4.
What?
You pay £4. And
really?
Not only that, more importantly than that, as far as I was concerned, was that instead of paying $16.95 for a fish and chip meal at the Tower of London, you pay £8. So you get everything. Now, if you top this up, right, and by the way, if your interest is more in animals than it is, for instance, in seeing the baubles of old monarchs, then you should potter down to London Zoo, where what used to cost you 61 quid cost you like 20 quid or something. There's a whole series of things, and then you throw in PIP, so you have a decision to make. Remember, you've only got £1. You are the Prime Minister now, you are the Chancellor, right? You've got £1. We're either going to spend it on more drones, more this, more that, more warships or whatever, okay? Or we're going to cut this down as a complete racket, right? And PIP, aspects of
Most
it,
of it,
not all of it,
Most
by the
of
way,
it.
aspects of it as a racket.
But
you should go.
visits.
Why not go to the country and say, actually, I'm a brave politician. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, for instance, now this will aggravate the audience. I'm going to freeze all pensions for the next 3 years.
Right.
Okay? Nobody's going to get pension. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do that. And we're going to take that whole lot and we're going to stick it into defence. Now, when you put these kinds of options to a load of wobbly voters who think that actually the country is made up of some money machine. By the way, that used to be true. 60s, 70s, even the 80s, right? Difficult 80s, right? Where is it today? We are skint and we are giving money to people who claim they have a bad
Here's
leg.
one for you. Have you seen the first quarter earnings for the Goldman Sachs for the first quarter of this year?
5.9 billion or something. Yeah.
We should put them in charge of the bleeding government, right? And because they know how to make money. But I'll tell you what they're doing. They're missing a trick at the Tower of London. Because I would go, all right, Universal Credit is a special line. Come in over here. In you come. In fact, you don't have to pay at all. You just come in for free, and then lead them into one of the chambers. Just lock the door and leave them in there, and go. As soon as you promise, when you got a job, right? We'll give you a phone. As soon as you've got yourself a job, we'll let you out. How about that?
Well, there is that approach. That's somewhat to the right of where I am on this argument. But
drop them down into Traitors Gate every now and again for a bit of a dunking.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we're so skint. Why don't we flog some of the crown jewels and shut down the Tower of London?
Yeah, well, that's not a bad idea.
Or get
as well.
Disney in to run the Tower of London and open it up to everybody not necessarily connected with the royal family. Look, we have a choice.
Yeah.
Right. Politics is about choosing.
It is about
I totally
choosing,
buy that.
But they have to stop wasting our money as well.
But somebody has to say, this is what I'm offering you.
Yeah.
Is anybody, is Farage, is Badenoch, we'll certainly know that Starmer isn't, and as for the Greens, what's what happened to the Greens? They do all right in this council election. 29, they will be slaughtered. They're complete major.
Well, Reform are certainly saying that they would attack the welfare budget. And
but that's
it. No,
he's been quite careful about that, hasn't he? He's been quite careful. He's basically, after all, he flip-flopped on 2-cap. Right, and also in relation to pensions.
Well, he was a bit nuanced on 2-cap, though, because he just said that, the 2-child benefit cap should be for people who are not coming here from overseas, but who are actually here already.
Yeah,
I think that's quite an interesting,
but at the end of the day, he didn't come out and say boom, boom, boom. So, look, we have choices. Right, 29 will be a fantastic year. I expect, by the way, forget about all these people. Right, all these people who said, we think that Reform will be damaged. It's going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to do the others. Have you been following the polls lately? The one I saw yesterday, 28 points, okay? 28 points. They will win by 1,000 miles. And the most fantastic
they've got something
16 of the cabinet go, boom, out the door.
They do.
Boom.
Well, I mean, the Times poll, I think it was, wasn't it? Because I read it out the other day, is absolutely terrible news for anybody except for Reform. It's got Reform predicted with 324 seats, up from 5. Labour 102, down from 411. Tories down to 81 from 121. Lib Dems down 10. The only people otherwise going up are the SNP and the Greens. But I mean, it's a washout for everybody else.
The Greens will fall away dramatically. But actually, it'd be probably bad news for Sir Jerry Howe's son-in-law, actually, and all that. I thought that was quite funny that he managed to keep everybody in the family there. Imagine, though, supposing that wasn't the case.
You can marry my daughter as long as you're a Tory.
Yeah, but supposing that wasn't the case, because normally what happens in life is your kids turn out to be shocking bloody lefties, right? With terrible liberal consequences for their lives. But supposing that's even more so when you're a former Tory, actually it'd make quite a good play, wouldn't it? Actually, I was at the play last night. I said to you, I went to saw it in The Print, which was the story of Murdoch versus Brenda Dean. And actually, the Rupert Murdoch character, I thought was reasonably close to it all. It wasn't a bad thing. I tell you, I saw Toby Young there last night. Yes, he felt that it was slightly too much. I paraphrase him there. Slightly too much documentary and too little drama.
It's not very
however,
entertaining.
I would say it's well worth the
And
game.
how about your own depiction? Was that something?
I tell you what. So mine was very
accurate.
Loudmouth Noel.
Right.
Yeah, that was me. Thanks very much. And also correct, by the way, on a number of occasions.
More
often, by the way, than Murdoch was when it comes to editorial matters. Anyway, moving that to one side. The one that won't like it is Andrew Neil, who came over as a camp, rather narcissistic figure, right, who enjoyed being on the television more than he enjoyed actually editing the paper. Murdoch would always say that to me, right? He'd say that, and he said that when eventually he pushed him out as the editor of the Sunday Times, actually he had quite a good story, Andrew Neil. So they offer him some flim-flam job in America to be TV, and Andrew Neil says to Murdoch, he's sitting there. He says, if you're pushing me out of the Sunday Times chair, I understand that. And then he spent 10 minutes explaining, what a genius he was and why he was entitled to 2 years' money. Murdoch doesn't say anything during that 10-minute tirade. At the end of it, he said, yep, I agree with you. Make it 3 years' money. Right.
Wow.
Which I thought was a...
Did he not go to Sky after that? Wasn't that where he ended up?
I think it was the chair. It was the chair for a while, wasn't it?
Because I can say this without any fear or favour, and having worked for both you and him when I was in America, you were both brilliant editors, actually. And
Really?
I mean, you make...
Do you know, that's not been said about me before. It's said about Andrew Neil regularly, mainly by Andrew Neil.
Yeah, no, I thought Andrew Neil was a great editor. In fact, when I worked mostly for I did a lot for the Sunday Times in those days, and Jonathan Witherow was the foreign editor. And he was also a really good foreign editor as well. And the Sunday Times then, when you think about it, was such a great paper. It was a real powerhouse. You looked forward to it every Sunday, you know, like the News of the World. And the Sun, again, the Sun was a fun newspaper, and you wanted to be part of it. It was great. You know?
Yeah, I mean, one of the
I make no apology for being nice to you.
Well, I think the other aspect now is that what's happened is that the newspapers, news sites have lost sight of the main point, right? They are supposed to create the news as well as report it.
Yeah.
Any idiot can report it. Oh, there's been a car crash in Harrogate, one dead, oh, that's very sad.
Yeah.
Nobody cares, right? It's not they don't care, the family care, but beyond that, it doesn't travel, right? However, if you could prove that the people who laid the tarmac laid the camber in the wrong direction, and the reason that there have been 3,000 crashes there in the last 10 years was entirely due to this fault.
Well, no, they don't do any of this anymore. I said this to Russell Quirk earlier today, and we've got to cut for the news in a minute, but I said to him, you know, if in the old days you'd have had a team of reporters, they'd go into somewhere like, pick a council at random and see how many people, like the Southport killer, are on their books. How many people have they got under surveillance? People that they know are a danger to society, who are in the grip of Prevent or whatever it is, and there'd be thousands of them, literally thousands, and that would be a good story. But nobody's doing it because nobody's got the stomach for it, because the news cycle is so ridiculously quick now that people will lose interest in this story after a couple of days, and they'll move on to something else because there's no journalistic integrity anymore. There's no curiosity, and there's no willingness to take a bit of time to actually find something out.
They also don't employ enough reporters, do they?
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised. There's still plenty of reporters knocking around, but they don't really do anything. They just sit there, you know.
Well,
that's
the truth is that you can get any idiot to report major issues, right? And what you do need to do is to say to your staff, you're not here to tell me something that I can already get on the Press Association. Right. You're here to tell our readers, actually, other stuff that's going on.
Piers
and
Morgan
you will be
incentivized. When we were at the Mirror, he'd come in the morning, and if all the reporters were sitting, he said, what are you all doing here? Get out and find a story. Go and find something I don't know. You know, I already read the PA news list. I know what's going to be on the news at 1. Go and find something that I don't know about, which is what you're supposed to do. That's what I always like.
For instance, I tell you what, I heard a story. I do hope this isn't true, that they are looking at 11 officers in relation to that terrible crash in Wimbledon. Do you remember where the lady, the chances of this happening,
ran into the nursery,
ran into the nursery and killed 2, on the basis that the officers did not show interest in this crime because there was because the people that died were of a different race. Now, I hope to God that story has no substance. That really would be the most shocking thing. This was a private school where in a 1,000,000 to 1 accident, right, possibly caused by something, possibly caused by nothing, who knows, right? I do hope that story isn't true. I feel very, very upset if that turned out to be the case.
Absolutely. Okay, Kelvin Mackenzie is here. We're going to now speak about something else that is troubling the general state of the economy. Benjamin Elks is here for the Taxpayers Alliance. We'll talk to him in a minute about the rich list of local councils in this country and how much money they're all making. It's an extraordinary report, annual event, and we're looking forward to that. First, there's some news with Edward Hughes.
Good morning. It's me, Edward Hughes, with your news. Former NATO chief Lord George Robertson has criticised the Starmer government for corrosive complacency on defence, warning the UK's national security is in peril amid the ongoing Iran conflict. The Prime Minister has stated Britain will not support any blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Rising fuel prices are hitting consumers hard, while Rachel Reeves is pushing the UK's growth strategy at the IMF summit. Britain's energy grid operators say the country has enough supply this summer despite Middle East tensions. In other headlines, an inquest found actor Warwick Davis's wife Samantha died just as hospital staff planned to discharge her. A former MOD clerk faces jail for stealing nearly £1 million in expenses fraud. Plans are underway to overhaul school dinners by removing high sugar and deep-fried foods. Please remember to like and subscribe. Laters Tigers.
Much indeed, Edward, for the news. He's back, of course, looking very trim, it has to be said. Now, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Benjamin Elks from the Taxpayers Alliance, an organisation that we talk to an awful lot here on this show, with whom we have a great rapport. I have great admiration for what you do as well, so welcome for the first time onto the show. You've got your annual rich list of councils, which is very eye-opening, in fact. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, that, you know, the amount of money, the numbers of people who are now earning in excess of six figures has sort of just gone up and up and up since last year. Tell us the highlights of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary. So it's an annual report we produce, as you say, and this is the 20th edition of the Town Hall Rich List. And this year we see 4,733 council employees receiving over £100,000 in a single year.
Yeah.
That's up. It's up about 800 on last year.
Right.
So it's sort of a 21%
So these people are just
increase.
awarding themselves more money, effectively.
I mean, there are pay review boards, but essentially, yes. So the councils are seeing the numbers of people on these extraordinary salaries, pay packets, bonuses, and pensions just going up year on year. And to put that in a bit of context, you know, we've just seen the biggest council tax increase since 2004.
Yeah.
So if people are wondering where their money's going, I mean, this is certainly part of it.
Right. And I mean, I'll just list a couple of the highlights here. The number of staff receiving over £150,000 has hit a record high of 1,255, up nearly 15% from last year, and almost 20 times more than the first time you did the rich list, which was under Tony Blair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these guys are on some kind of gravy train, aren't
This
they?
is it. You cast your mind back to sort of 2007 when we first released this. You got Fabio Capello as football coming in as England manager.
Yeah.
The last Harry Potter book hasn't come out. So we've been doing this for a long time, and every year, sort of consistently, the numbers just go up and up. You've got sort of the highest paid individual, the highest package on there was for an unnamed, unidentified employee up in Staffordshire.
Yes.
They received £457,000.
That's amazing. And is it their choice? They don't have to supply the name, even though it's public money and it's actually in at some point, presumably in the public record.
Yeah,
who this guy is.
Lots of councils do publish sort of the names and the titles of the senior executives, but for some reason this one has not been released by Staffordshire.
366 local authority employees of total remuneration of at least 200,000, which is a nearly 40% increase from the year before.
Yeah, it's staggering.
I mean, what's the process, do you know, in terms of when, say, for example, the leader of the Staffordshire Council thinks, you know what, 350 grand's not enough, I think I need another 100. How does that work?
So essentially, there are sort of pay review bodies that set it, but it's still voted through by local councils. They still approve the pay deals, and particularly when they're sort of hiring new executives and what have you. That's really the time that they ought to be really cracking down on what they're agreeing to pay them going forward.
Yeah. So here's a good one. Elaine Allegretti, Strategic Director of Children and Adults at Barking and Dagenham Council, right, receives the largest bonus payment in 24-25, £34,161, which brings her total remuneration to £232,923 for running the Children and Adults Department. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's a really good question. I mean, sort of some of that will cover things like social care and what have you. But
right.
I think if you're a resident of Barking and Dagenham, you're going to look at that and think, hang on, is that really justified? You know, is that?
Yeah, what do you get a bonus for?
Yeah, quite.
You know,
quite.
I mean, I'd like to get a bonus of 34,000. That'd be quite handy
nice.
at the moment, to be honest.
Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to give most of it back to the taxman, but never mind.
Quite.
East of England have 454 council employees who received at least £100,000. I said this to Kelvin earlier. The highest remunerated council employee was the Assistant Chief Executive at Cambridge Council, who receives £330,000. Does that mean the Assistant Chief Executive gets more than the Chief Executive?
Well, quite possibly. I mean, so in that way, in that case, there was sort of a very large loss of office payment. You know, it was sort of way beyond statutory redundancy pay. That sort of most people can expect, and yet these council bosses feel they can sort of walk away with hundreds of thousands of pounds in loss of office.
And presumably these are jobs that you can't get fired from as well.
I mean, it's very rare that you do see sort of people actually get sacked from these roles. There was a stat the other week of some government department where you were more likely to die in the job than be sacked. You know, so
we're laughing, but it's absolutely shocking this, because the total. I mean, have you got a total amount of remuneration for all of the councils?
I'm sure it could be added up. There's an enormous spreadsheet with all of these people listed on that anyone can sort of look at.
I'm intrigued by the one from London, which is the highest remunerated council employee, Mr. or Ms. C. Spencer, who runs the Barbican Centre for the City of London Council, 373,000 quid.
Yeah.
This
is rife across not just London but the country. If you want to look at London as well, you look at sort of a council like Westminster, where they have 92 people receiving more than £100,000 for one council. It's absolutely bizarre. And obviously, most of the time we're talking about total remuneration on this, so we are counting salary, bonuses, pensions, that sort of thing. But just looking at salary. There's something like 320 council employees who receive more than the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Now, he's got an entitlement to about 172,000. Yeah. And, you know, for most people, I imagine everyone who's watching this will think that's an awful lot of money.
It is.
And maybe, you know, the current resident of number 10 doesn't necessarily deserve that. But you can sort of think, we probably need to pay someone in that position a reasonable amount.
I imagine most people would agree that you should probably pay the Prime Minister quite a lot of money. Yeah. And he should probably be the top paid civil servant, if you want, or you know, public sector employee. But he's clearly not, is he?
Yeah, quite.
Because there's loads of people in the NHS, for example, who make in excess of 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. I mean, I've seen figures from some NHS health trusts where the chief executive makes about 600,000 or 700,000.
Yeah, it's
and again, it's all public money, isn't it?
It is. It's all taxpayers' money, and you know, the reason we produce this is so that people can see exactly where their money is going.
Yeah.
When we first did this back in 2007, we had to get this information through Freedom of Information requests. It wasn't routinely published, and it was a Taxpayers Alliance campaign to make it something that councils and other public sector bodies had to put into their accounts.
Yeah.
Just to really allow people to get an idea of where their money's going and are they actually getting any value for it.
Yeah, and also quite often breaking down the council tax bill is an interesting thing to do, because a lot of it goes towards these salaries and remunerations and pensions of the people working for the council, and quite a small matter of it. I mean, I was told, I think years ago, something approaching 70% of council tax actually goes to running the council. As opposed to, you know, and by that I mean paying the people that work there, as opposed to actually doing anything about the roads,
fixing
or the schools, or the police, or anything.
Bins and all the rest of it.
That's a sort of afterthought.
Well, quite,
you know, if you're lucky. Also, by the way, I don't know whether everybody else has noticed this. Maybe apparently there's been a nationwide outbreak of food waste bins being delivered to people in every council up and down the country, because they've now said, despite the fact that they can't collect your rubbish more than twice a month, they now want to come and collect your food waste in addition to waste recycling that you might have to do.
Yeah.
And they've all invested millions and millions of pounds in these plastic buckets, which they've given free to everybody. Yeah. And you're now supposed to put your food waste in.
Yeah.
Where's that money coming from?
Well, it's a great point. But oddly enough, it's actually been a bit of a simplification for some areas. We did a report on this a couple of years ago, and there are some areas that issue 9 different bins to their residents and expect them to sort all of their rubbish into
it. Put that one in that bin.
Yeah, quite.
You know,
quite.
that's what I would
Absolutely.
do. This is one of my favourites, and for those of you who know North Lanarkshire in Scotland, you will be wryly amused by this, but not if you live there. The highest remunerated council employee for North Lanarkshire Council is one Katrina Hassel, who is Chief Officer Business and Digital, right, whatever that is, 281,680 quid. Which buys you an awful lot of deep-fried Mars bars up in that part of the world.
Quite. You wonder how many people in North Lanarkshire, before they read this, have ever heard of her.
No. Absolutely extraordinary. Amazing.
How much was that?
281,680 quid.
Okay, I'm just looking up North Lancashire economy.
North Lanarkshire.
Yeah, it says here North Lancashire is experiencing...
No, not North Lancashire, North Lanarkshire.
Yeah, Lanarkshire.
Right.
It's the AI growth zone. It's the anyway.
It's basically outside of Glasgow. It's a pretty rough neck of the woods, to be honest. But anyway, there we are. So where can people see the actual? Because a lot of the papers have obviously covered the story today. But is there a website they can look at the
Yes,
whole
so if
thing
they
and
go
look up their own council?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to taxpayersalliance.com, the report is on our website. It should be on the sort of front page of there, and you can look up your own council, see how many people are receiving these pay packets.
Okay, tremendous stuff, brilliant. Well, good to see you, Benjamin Elks, Taxpayers Alliance. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Mike.
That is a very valuable service to the community, I would say, because it is an extraordinary document, which you should definitely go and check on your own kind of councillors to see how much they're getting, because it's absolutely extraordinary, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of break being put on the increases that are going on every single day. Absolutely amazing. Shall I do my meltdown?
Yeah, that's okay.
Is it time? I think it's time to play that Keir Starmer clip again, isn't it?
You really are.
So, should we do that?
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests, individuals will be held on remand, charges will follow, and convictions will follow. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery, and it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham. Marauding gangs intent on law-breaking, or worse. Windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none, for taking this action, and all right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence. People in this country have a right to be safe. And yet, we've seen Muslim communities targeted, attacks on mosques, other minority communities singled out, Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is, far-right thuggery. To those who feel targeted because of the colour of your skin or your faith, I know how frightening this must be. I want you to know that this violent mob do not represent our country, and we will bring them to justice. Our police deserve our support as they tackle any and all violent disorder that flares up. Whatever the apparent cause or motivation, we make no distinction. Crime is crime, and this government will tackle it. Thank you.
Possibly one of the most ill-judged and ridiculous statements that Keir Starmer's ever made, and he's made an awful lot of them. And that was, of course, his response to what he called the far-right riots that took place after the Southport killings, and people were angry because they didn't know, because the government wasn't telling them, who had committed the crime. They deliberately withheld the information. They deliberately did not identify the killer as a second-generation immigrant. They made it, in fact, even more difficult for anyone to work out who he was by naming him as a Welsh choir boy. The reason that people were angry was not just because of that, but it was also because of the illegal migrant situation in hotels up and down the country, committing crimes up and down the country. And when he made that speech in Downing Street, what he didn't do was say, what about the people who were in fear of their lives when he went on the rampage in a Taylor Swift-themed dance class for little girls? Their names: B.B. King, age 6, Elsie Dot Stankham, age 7, Alice de Silva Aguilar, age 9, killed, brutally stabbed multiple times by this maniac who should never have been allowed to do it. It's been now ruled by Sir Adrian Fulford, a retired High Court judge, that they should never have died, that they should never have been in any danger, because this scumbag should have been held somewhere in a safe place. He shouldn't have been free to walk the streets. His parents are now being called culpable because they didn't do enough to stop him, even though they knew he was collecting knives. He was building a terrorist cell in his bedroom with ricin, poison, reading manuals that would tell him how to be a terrorist. Everybody knew that this guy was dangerous, but nobody did anything. And for Keir Starmer now to say that he's going to do everything he can to protect people in this country, it's complete balderdash and it's embarrassing. Let's just remind ourselves of when he went to Southport after it all went horribly wrong. He did this.
How many more children, Prime Minister? Are we going to do something? Time to change, Starmer. Come on, needed. How many more children? Is it mine next?
We're going to stand up for our children. Act.
Bye-bye.
He was there for 19 seconds. He came back to London without talking to the local community, without talking to anyone who wanted to talk to him and ask him why he'd allowed this to happen, to a party at Downing Street celebrating his election as the new Prime Minister. Absolutely shocking. This is a meltdown which I feel very strongly about, and I hope to God something is done. As we said earlier on the show today, somebody needs to carry the can for this. Somebody needs to be fired. Somebody needs to be punished. Whether it's the parents, whether it's the people that run Prevent, whether it's the local council, whether it's the police, somebody needs to be held responsible. Surely that will happen. Let's hope so. Kelvin Mackenzie's back with us. Lucy Connolly is here as well. And we wanted to speak to Lucy today, Kelvin, because Starmer put out his pathetic tweet yesterday saying how terribly sorry he was that it had all happened. And Lucy was really, really worked up and said exactly, how dare you say something like that at a time like this, when everybody knows that Keir Starmer not only withheld the truth from the people of this country, but he made sure that people like Lucy Connolly were locked up for a tweet. Lucy, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I really wanted to talk to you today because you, of all people, are sort of key to this whole story in a way, because you're the other side, if you like, of that conversation you just watched Keir Starmer have about the far-right thuggery. You were basically put in prison for something that you put down on a tweet, which you deleted, and which you apologised for, and which most right-thinking people would have said, well, you know what, that's kind of what I felt like as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make this about me, because it's not about me. It's about the families of those beautiful girls and those girls, and let's not forget the many more that were injured, and God knows what kind of trauma they suffer now.
Yeah.
I saw his tweet yesterday, and oh gosh, Mike, I mean, I have to be so careful what I say here because I'm still unlicensed, but raging doesn't even cover it. I've barely slept. I'm so angry. How dare he? How dare he? He's not worthy to make a statement like that. What's he done to make sure that didn't ever happen or will ever happen again? What he should be doing, Mike, is committing to a witch hunt, to every single person that was involved in these failures, every single police officer, every single social services member, every single Prevent member, as far as I'm aware, the teachers actually did try and flag all this up, but they were shut down, weren't they? Yeah. Anybody that had contact with this monster and decided that, there was no case to answer for, needs to be held accountable. If you and I were in this position, we would be made to. And I can tell you, as a mother that's lost a child, and not only lost a child knowing that that child didn't need to die, they could have been saved, just like this could have been prevented, it's going to drive them demented forever.
Yeah. Because, as Kelvin said earlier on, you can't imagine, you can imagine it because you have lost a child, as you say, but for those of us who have been fortunate enough not to have, the days of the rest of your life are never the same, are they? Particularly, and I know from just the business that I've done all my life when I've covered stories like this, and if you were a parent whose child was murdered like that, you would always be thinking what it was like in their final moments of life. It's horrible. It's just horrific.
It's awful. And also you have these thoughts that you're like, well, I do think that like most of the doctors involved with Harry, they don't give a shit. So, if you don't hold people to account, they're going to live the rest of their life thinking, they've got away with it. They made these failures. My child doesn't matter, that they can carry on doing their job. And who's next? Because if you don't make people accountable for their failures, how can they make sure they don't do them again?
Yeah. Well, I think you said that earlier, Kelvin, didn't you? That, we know that there will be more of these events because you just know that the people responsible for supposedly stopping them are not capable of stopping them, are they?
Not only are they not capable of stopping them, it's not that they don't want to stop them. What they don't want to do is to say anything which actually stops them from the rather smooth progress of their own lives. And that's where the problem is. There is no consequence for not doing anything. So you decide, I'm not going to do anything, then you can't be blamed for anything. Yeah. And then you have what happened today with those children, but actually happens on a regular basis. We have to have a different mindset, but you're not going to have a different mindset where every council official is getting a thumping great pay rise every year and has a fantastic pension and has a lot at risk if they were ever to say, excuse me, sir, it's not racism to say that this is a young black kid with violent thoughts that has a knife, right? That is not racism. That is common sense. And unfortunately, common sense will cost you promotion, will cost you a bonus, will cost you a secure job. So if you're in local authority, in the education sphere, in the health sphere, and even in the police force, unbelievably, you face a significant issue by saying what is straightforward, common sense. How is that going to change? I can't see it changing under this mob. And actually, let's be honest about it, what happened was over the last 14 years, people like Cameron and co were actually part of that. Cameron and Osborne set the rot in for the country, right? We have 14 years of wasted opportunity. They're not going to get a second chance. Personally, I'm pleased about that. I'm kind of in the middle normally, but actually this kind of stuff tips me over.
Yeah, it's shocking.
Yeah, I don't want to hear any Conservative MP with their crap, false platitudes either, because, as much as I dislike Keir Starmer, as much as I dislike the Labour government, we can't actually really blame them for this. We can blame them for the aftermath and the inquiry and the way they handled the riots and all those things. But let's be honest, these failures were under a Conservative government. So they're all to blame.
They really are. And I mean, you've now been in the prison system. I know you're now quite interested in how that all works. And so you've sort of got more of an insight in some ways into the way the system, if you like, works. I mean, would you have any kind of thoughts on how to make these people either more responsible or more adept at doing their jobs? I mean, what we keep hearing is there's a process, but sometimes the process doesn't get followed. And so things slip through the net. I mean, how do you fix that?
I don't know. I think there's a massive problem with them all closing ranks, in like the prison system, the NHS, police. If one person's messed up, they don't tend to come forward, do they, and whistleblow? Because very often the whistleblowers are the ones that lose their jobs. There's a really toxic culture in public service of the person coming forward to report the problem is more than likely going to lose their job than the person that is the problem. That's the way I see it. I've never worked in the public sector. I've always worked in the private sector, and I do feel that, like, in the private sector, you're held way more accountable for your own actions in your job than you are in the public sector.
Yeah, there seems to be an awful lot of reasons why you don't have to do your job in the public sector, and quite often where you don't even have to go in anywhere and do it, and you can just be off sick for months and months at a time. Somebody's just asked a question there, Lucy, I don't know if you saw it, Lady K, I think. When is your licence period up, and is it sort of indeterminate?
The 9th of March next year.
Next year? And so what, I mean, without wishing to get yourself into any troubles, I don't want to do that, What are the conditions under which your licence operates?
So I have to check into probation. It's currently every 2 weeks. They've just changed it to 2 weeks and weekly. I have certain conditions on my licence. I mean, my bespoke ones are things like I can't go to a meeting of more than 50 people without prior permission from probation. Standard things like if I want to go away, I have to, get their permission, give them the address that I'm going to, can't leave the country.
Right. You can't leave the country at all?
No. Well, I can with their permission, but they won't give it to me.
Right. That's extraordinary, isn't it? And what about what you can say or what? Because I mean, you're quite outspoken. You're able to appear on shows like this.
I have to be very careful. I've already been in trouble for saying stuff
that
I actually thought. Yeah, but things that I actually thought were really, really innocent.
Right. Can you say what they were? Or not really?
I probably better hadn't.
Well, I don't want you to say it again, but I mean, sort of hint at what sort of.
There was a time where I was speaking about Al Fatah, the guy that the Egyptian guy that was going to kill us all, and the police, and that one.
Yeah, right.
And and Keir Starmer and his cronies were clapping like seals that that were going to let him in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I was on GB News, and I basically said, we've got enough criminals of our own in the country without importing any more. But I didn't use the word criminal.
Yeah. Okay.
And yes, I got in trouble for that.
But even so, so they're still trying to censor your speech.
Do you know what's fantastic about this? Isn't it? What's fantastic about this? What different? I mean, Lucy Connolly is to many people a heroine, right? And actually, perhaps the politicians should be learning from her what populism looks like. And actually, the way it's been turned on its head is that the probation department, an arm correctly of the state, right, paid for by taxpayers, many of whom, by the way, will support Lucy's original tweet, let alone where she stands now, are actually the probation are showing more interest in Lucy Connolly post-jail, right, and trying to control what is being said, right? Can you imagine armed robbers, GBH merchants, general frauds people, right? Paying the slightest bit of attention.
Actual criminals.
Yeah, real criminals. Paying the slightest bit of attention to what a probation officer thinks. In fact, they can't get probation officers to do this job. They're short all the time.
Yeah.
And the reason are because basically these big thugs just turn around and say, what are you going to do about it?
It's the old baby P stuff, isn't it? Whereby, it's much easier to police Lucy Connolly than it is to police some guy with an iron bar who might hit you when he opens his front door. The reason baby P came to such harm was because the social services were frightened to go to the house. Yeah. And they'd only go, I remember when one of my kids was born in Scotland, they kept sending round the health visitor, to what would be generally described as a very, cosy, very middle class, quite well to do.
Were they going next door then?
They were, yeah. No, I'm talking about their mother, not me. And, this woman kept turning up and saying, is everything all right? Well, yeah, of course it's all right. It's fine, thanks. There's a Mercedes out there. He's got a job.
Why don't you go down the road where nobody gets up?
Yeah.
I can remember, I think it was it was in Sheffield. It was in Liverpool, I think, where there was snow, and the snow drivers, the guys who operate the gritting machines, said it was too cold to go out, right? So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you normally come across with the state. So I am astonished that the probation department would want to spend their time monitoring
because it's an easy job, because she's not going to do anything terrible to them, and she's not going to cause them an issue, right? Let me play you a clip, right? This is fascinating. This was picked up by Charlotte, who was kind enough to arrange for Lucy to come on, our producer. This is Charlie Kirk, right? The American, I guess, polemicist, would you call him? Talking about Lucy Connolly.
Today, she's had her appeal denied, so she's going to be carrying out her 2.5-year sentence for solitary tweets,
so outrageous,
which she deleted 4 hours later. What's your take on the whole situation?
Well, I'm going to try to get the U.S. State Department involved. I don't know if what their bandwidth is here, but I'm sorry. Again, I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a U.S. government. I just want to be very clear. Is this a way that a liberal democracy and an ally of the United States acts? Just to be clear, what she said would not be any prison time in America. I don't like what she said, but she showed contrition. Well, there's two parts. The first part where she said, like, I don't want immigrants in my country, perfectly acceptable, that's fine. Like, you can say that, you're allowed to have that. I think there was one part about, like, potentially, like, violent whatever.
Well, she said, let me clarify what she said.
Yeah, I want to be clear.
So I think by the time she sent the tweets, some asylum hotels were in the midst of being burnt down or their Molotovs thrown through a window. She tweeted, burn them down for all I care.
You're allowed to say that in America.
So the argument is, was she inciting violence there? Or was she reacting to the images she was seeing?
You could, and by the way, just to be clear, you guys have the wrong incitement threshold. In America, you need to have specific time and specific place in order to reach the incitement threshold. Every day people say, well, someone should go kill Charlie Kirk. I don't like it. But that's protected speech. In America, we care about what you do, not about what you say. And then she showed contrition and she apologized. And from my understanding, when the police force showed up to her door, they asked her questions being like, do you think that, do you hate immigrants? No, she gave like very satisfactory answers and they still arrested her. And I just find it so outrageous that she's going to now jail for 2.5 years for a deleted social media post that she apologized for. As you guys have birthed free speech to the world, you now guys are becoming a totalitarian country.
I mean, I don't remember seeing that at the time, actually. So when I saw it last night, I was like, that's just an amazing... because it's quite interesting on that whole subject of the threshold for, incitement to violence. And I think he's right. America's got that right, because we all say things, which could be transmitted. And as Kelvin said, I've said things that if I was Lucy Connolly, they probably would lock me up as well. But they're a bit frightened of coming for media people. So, they pick easy targets. But, I mean, it must be sort of surreal in a way for you to see somebody like Charlie Kirk talking about you.
Yeah, good old Charlie. But I agree with him. I agree with everything that he said. There was no incitement. And just to correct what Ben Leo was saying in that video, I actually made my tweet on the afternoon of the killings.
Yeah.
So there had been no riots, no fires, anything like that. I deleted that tweet the same evening. When the riots did kick off, there was plenty of tweets and etc. on my Twitter to say, please stop this. This isn't the way forward. You're playing right into the government's hands because I believe they want this. This is what they want. Why are they pushing people's buttons like this?
Yeah.
Why can't they just just accept there's a problem and work with everybody to try and find a solution instead of threatening to throw everyone in jail?
Yeah, absolutely right. And Ben Leo also got something else wrong where he said that he thought that, some hotels were being burned down. There weren't any hotels were not being burned down. I mean, there were some hotels where there was a bit of trouble outside. But there was no suggestion. Yeah, I mean, there was no suggestion that anyone was burning any bloody hotels down. It was absolute rubbish, I mean,
don't get me wrong, they behave like absolute idiots, hooligans, but I do not believe for 1 second that those idiots that were doing that even have a Twitter account, let alone saw my tweet. So the fact that people can say, well, you told them to go and do it, and no, I didn't. Right. They might have seen your tweets. You were encouraging violence. No, I wasn't.
No, exactly. And back to his definition of the threshold for what that offence should be.
One of the great things, and especially I suspect your viewers, is that we have a big vote coming up on May the 6th.
7th.
May the 7th, sorry. And the result of that vote will be the result of multiple views about things that have been said by Starmer. And I expect him to take the most terrible bashing. I also expect, by the way, the Conservatives to take the most terrible bashing as well. People feel that we now have a government which sits outside on every major subject of our lives. Often financial, by the way. Often financial. I feel a lot poorer. And we have an opportunity. And so, Lucy, I think you should use your platform to get people to... Are you allowed to use your platform, actually, to get people to vote in a certain way or not?
Yeah, I can, as long as I'm not saying anything, derogatory or anything.
Sure.
But all I would say on the matter is I cannot wait until May the 7th, until the Labour and the Tories get wiped out from general elections and local councils. I'm sick and tired of being told by the loony left that, you know, we're a small minority and that this is, you know, the way the country is at the minute is absolutely fine and this is what everybody wants.
Yeah.
We can tell by the, you know, recent elections, by-elections and stuff, that's clearly not what people want. And, you know, these votes will reflect that in May. Now, what I would say is I know there's a whole, like, the right are kind of eating themselves alive at the minute. You know, it's kind of become a Restore v Reform thing. And obviously, Restore aren't standing any candidates for obvious reasons in the May elections. You know, you can't really expect them to get people together in the amount of time that they set up their party. So if you are a Restore voter, please lend your vote to Reform. Please get out there and vote because, you know, voting, the statistics now are terrible. You know, like 10% of the country rocks out to vote and then everybody moans that such and such has got in or this is happening or that's happening. And people think that local elections aren't important, but actually they're the most important to you. The people that you're voting in locally, they are, or they should be, the people that you can go to and say, look, I've got a problem in my area, there's fly tipping everywhere, or I can't get my child into this school, I need this help, I need this help. But, you know, I mean, and I know this from obviously the work that Ray does, he helps an immense amount of people in our local area. And that's what your local council is there to do. So actually, your local councillor is really more important to you than your MP.
No, I couldn't agree more. Listen, Lucy, great to see you. Great to talk to you. As ever. Yeah. Get Lucy on? Yeah, absolutely. Well, May the 7th, May the 6th, May the 8th, whatever you like. I mean, you know, we'll certainly get you on again before that. That's for sure. Brilliant. Great to see you. And thank you again for taking the time to talk to us. Lucy Connolly, we'll cheer you up with this. Starmer's worst moment is the poll today. Was it the 19 seconds you spent laying a floral tribute up at Southport? Was it the far-right thug speech that we played you a little bit earlier? Was it rushing back to London from Southport without speaking to anyone and going to a drinks party? Or was it being born? And I'm afraid to say, once again, proving himself to be the most unpopular man in the world, being born, 60% of the population. This is why people love this show, because it's honest. You know, that's how people feel. Now, I need to talk to you about a couple of other things before we go, because you went abroad, I think, fairly recently. Yeah. Did you have any problems travelling? Because the big story this morning, I think the newspaper's got it on the front, a lot of families left stranded. There were people apparently stuck in Milan. I'm told by the sort of the travel authorities that most people are not having a problem, but a few people are.
Right. Well, it depends. Okay. So the answer is, if you want to guarantee getting yourself through quickly, I'm afraid you've got to go business class because you're first off the plane, right? And therefore, quick 4 fingers and a photo. And literally, I was through Malta, which is one of the black spots. Actually, I'm told there's.
Is it?
There was a piece in the Times actually a couple of 10 days ago saying it was taking 4 hours to get through. Yeah. Actually, in my case. Me and my wife, we were through in 10 minutes. Okay. However, if we were at the back of the plane and I was obviously looking out for this, I reckon it would have taken you at the speed we were going through, 4 fingers, photo, I reckon it would have taken north of an hour. Right. Now, normally, of course, then on the other side, you've got the EU, right? They're getting through. Now, actually, you come through to Heathrow, and the EUers...
They can come through with us,
they're coming through with us. Yeah. So why don't we either reciprocate... Why don't they reciprocate all that? Now, one of the issues that we will face, although, funnily enough, when I came back through, I had to do it again,
on the way out.
Even although it should have registered 4 fingers and a photo. So... No, not
well. This is apparently what the problem is. Certainly in Milan, the issue is not so much going in as coming out. And so I mean, I've had this in Portugal, where you go through security and you think that was quite bad, and then you go down and you go downstairs at the Faro, and there's this massive, great hall full of people who are having to say they're leaving the country. So it was already bad, right? But there's no doubt in my mind that there are 2 things going on here. Some countries are deciding just to stick 2 fingers up to Britain and go, you know, I think they're being encouraged to do it by Starmer and his lot, because what they want to do is to get a load of people to go, oh, blimey, it's a nightmare going to Europe now. If we were running back in the EU single market, it would be a lot easier and they'd lift all this and we'd be able to go and we wouldn't have to wait in queues. I think that's what's going on, because quite a lot of the countries are not making it any more difficult than it was.
That's true of the migrants in Calais, isn't it? This is the penalty because you had the temerity to conduct democracy.
Exactly.
So the question, I suppose, going for the forward, which is why I absolutely guarantee to you that in the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, as a last roll of the dice, in 29. We'll give you another vote. They're absolutely going to do it, and so will the Liberals. And do you know what's going to happen? They're both going to get
they're going to get wiped off. So wiped off the face of the map.
So I would say, let's look at this. I'm going to the US, but I'm going to Greece, I think, or somewhere in Greece, one of those places.
Yeah, one of the islands.
Yeah. In June.
Okay.
And so that will be the test, because by which time, hopefully, the system will have settled down. But if it's an EU system, it's a bit like the state agency system in relation to the Rabat Cabana murders, right? Will it work?
Yeah, well, this is the problem as well, isn't it? Because when I remember the Americans did it for a while, where because I used to go to America on a much more regular basis than I have been in the last year or so. And I arrived at Kennedy one time, and instead of you going straight to see a human, they put you through these machines, right?
Yeah, correct.
Now, as usual, with the machines, half of the people didn't know what to do or how to make it work. Even I, who am reasonably adept at this, you put your hand on it, doesn't work. Put your hand on it again, doesn't work. So it takes, even if it takes 10 minutes, and you've got a plane with 400 people on it, that's a long time. And I suspect that that's what's going on in some of these parts of Europe, where people are being asked to sort of somehow measure themselves, do their own facial image. I mean, I was listening to a guy from Abta this morning who said, you can get around it by you can do your facial recognition picture before you get to the airport. Yeah, you can do things like a sort of advanced check-in type thing, which will save you some. Apparently, you can.
Well, how do they deal with the fingers then?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I presume you have to do that when you're there.
Yeah.
But the point is that I remember when they first said that they were going to no longer accept British people without them showing a passport, because remember, it used to be, they used to not stamp it. And I remember going into, I think it was Kos or somewhere in Greece, and it was actually quicker, because you went through a non-EU channel and all the other Europeans were going through the EU channel, and we were the only ones in the non-EU channel. And the fact that the guy used to take your passport, look at it and give it back, and he's now taking it and putting a stamp, it didn't take any more time.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of wishing either to be helpful or not to be helpful. And I suspect what we're getting here is the EU just trying not to be helpful.
Yes, but we're worth a lot of money. I mean, if you didn't have tourism, if you didn't have tourism in Malta, then that would be the end of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they only have one form of shop there, and it's called food shopping.
Yeah,
and the reason people are going to restaurants and everything is because they come from countries like come from countries like the UK. Look, they would exist without UK travel, and we have to get out of this country. Otherwise, we'll be sitting there listening to Starmer's thoughts all day, and that would be nightmarish.
Yeah, absolutely right. We're just watching everything going up and up and up. I'm going to leave you with Nicola Sturgeon.
Oh, right.
You might have forgotten about her.
Good point.
But she's got a new job. And it will not surprise you to know that it's in the refugee area.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
is it a Scottish refugee area?
Well, I'm not sure. Check this out.
Hi, I'm Nicola Sturgeon, and I am delighted to be joining Safe Passage International as its new chair. We live today in an increasingly unstable world. As a result, more and more people are being forced to flee their own homes in search of safety elsewhere. But instead of working together to find solutions, governments everywhere are responding by pulling up the drawbridge. From my years of experience in politics, I know that doesn't solve the problem. It just forces people to make journeys that are much more dangerous. That's why I believe that the work of Safe Passage International, while difficult, matters today more than ever before. Our legal teams help families separated by war and persecution to be reunited. The expert legal and social support they provide gives children in particular the chance to grow up in safety. And that is what all children deserve. But the hard fact is that the safe routes families depend on are disappearing. That is why, right now, Safe Passage International is challenging in court the brutal suspension by the UK government of a vital route for child refugees to reunite with their mums or dads. If you can, please support this challenge with a donation today. I know that a better way is possible. It is through the work of organisations like Safe Passage International, and of course, thanks to people like you, that we can and will make it happen.
Do you know what?
I mean, give me strength.
Dear, oh dear. First of all, I should imagine if the first face you saw when you arrived in Scotland from Rwanda or Congo and you saw her, she'd be on the first boat back again. The other thing is, I read the other day that in fact she has found love again. Did you see that? Right. Well, she divorced her husband.
Yes.
Who was the chief executive of her party.
He was.
And is still facing a charge of 600 grand having gone missing, which is normally about the entire profits of Scottish companies, I would think. And anyway, the 600 grand and there was the motorhome.
The motorhome.
That was the clue, and the Jaguar.
Yeah, that's it.
And by the way, in Scotland, over there, you were basically, if you drove around in a Jaguar, you were considered to own half of Scotland anyway, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so she loses her job, quite rightly, and now she's helping out the refugees. Well, I don't imagine that the refugees want any help from her.
This organisation that she's working with, right, Safe Passage International, apparently they're taking the Home Office to court.
Oh, good.
They are challenging the cruel suspension of refugee family reunion, leaving thousands of children in danger away from their mum or dad. So dad's on a boat, right, on a dinghy. Apparently he's left his kids at home. And these people are taking money from you and I to give to the family so that they can bring their kids over.
I would have thought that having somebody like her as the face of your charity was actually probably a rather serious issue in terms of revenues to be raised.
Well,
could you imagine rattling a can outside Waterloo Station or something, saying, and there was a big picture.
Yeah.
Big
also
picture.
in Scotland, she's quite a divisive figure because a lot of people hate her for what she did during the time she was the First Minister. So, I mean, nobody's going to give any money to an organisation
so here's a
fronted
question
by
I have
her.
for your viewers before they finally leave, exhausted, which do you believe that the new love of her life, whenever it's
do you know
revealed,
who it is?
I have no idea who it is. Whether it's likely to be
a non-binary individual,
a man, woman, or non-binary, right? And
French, possibly.
Pardon?
French, possibly.
Possibly foreign.
Yeah.
Because obviously,
well, that was the rumour at the time.
Really? Oh, what the suggestion that she was going out with the French minister, actually.
Yeah, I think a consul or something like that.
Yes. And, well, it'd be quite an interesting discussion. It'd be the most interesting thing about her, really. Yeah. And will obviously come as a great interest to her divorced husband.
Well, she did that interview. I suspect he knows and has known for a while. She did an interview, didn't she? And I know we're running over here, sorry. And she basically talked, I think it was to Julie Etchingham from ITV. And she was asked about the subject of her sexuality. She was very vague about it. Didn't sort of want to go there and didn't want to reveal one way or the other which side she batted for.
No, I don't mind which side she bats for. I'd just be fascinated to see which side she bats for, to be honest. And if
I thought of that already.
And I actually.
Can we read it out, please?
No, I don't think we should read it out. Right. It's too rude. People can read it for themselves.
What was that? Keir Starmer? What? Oh yeah,
yeah. He's with another organisation which can't name currently. Anyway, listen, we're at the end of the show. Don't forget the pooches. Yeah, well, we're going to go to our usual place now, where we go and take you across to UK Live. Because, of course, that's where we will be setting up a new operation shortly. I know I keep saying that, but we will. And
by the time you get there, it'll be dead.
Yeah, no, it won't be actually.
UK dead.
Incorrect. It will not be because literally, we're the youngest broadcasting network in the world, right?
Yes.
I've never been short of hyperbole, right? I used to call my my show at Talk the fastest growing show on in the world, fastest growing show in the world. And people.
Why did you say that?
Because it was.
Was it?
Because we were going up so quickly. Also, I'm like, who's going to disprove it? Who's going to say that there's another show that's growing quicker than this? And so there are things that you know what it's like when you're promoting things.
Yeah,
you can
sure.
promote, I call this the fastest growing, or the biggest actually, because this is true, biggest YouTube breakfast show in Britain, because it is.
Yeah. Because it's the only one.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Everybody else is on YouTube.
Oh, right.
You know, you can look at GB News, you look at Talk, you look at ITV, Sky. They've all got breakfast shows. They're all on YouTube, and we kill them every single day. Right? Yeah, so therefore, it's the biggest YouTube breakfast show.
I tell you what, we should say a quick word for Eamon Holmes, shouldn't we?
We should.
Because he's not a bad cove, and he's clearly had a shocking health run.
Yeah.
And he's just had a stroke, I think. And to be honest, I personally, I wish him well, and
of course,
I hope he battles through it.
Yeah. He seems to be recovering. I think. I don't think it was a terribly bad stroke. I don't think, from what we can gather.
Do you think he'll ever be back though after all these?
I wouldn't recommend that he does go back for a while. I think he should take some time.
And he's been off since March the 11th, hasn't he, or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So we do wish him well. Of course we do, as we would anybody who we've known over the course of time. This is from Fraser, who says, Russell, then Kelvin, then Orla, strongest show yet. This is why I support Mike. See, there you go. What are we doing now?
These super chats and we go.
Jane, why pensions? Why not net zero illegal immigrants? Stop spending on them. Well, there's plenty of things we can stop spending on. This is what I keep saying. Government needs to stop wasting our money. Movie of the day, Elysium. It's an allegory. Is it?
Good film.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. Is that the one about the robots?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll take your food waste, process it, and sell it back into the food chain. Why else? Sloppy nuggets. Yeah, I'm not playing with the food. I use it as an ice bucket, the one they gave me. Put a bottle of champagne in it because it fits quite well. Right. So, are we moving over?
We are now.
Let's go over to UK Alive. If you can't find it,
Lord Carlisle clip, shall we?
We'll play the Lord Carlisle clip for Kelvin because I think we'd like to see that. Let's go, though, over to UK Live, which you can find, if you can't find it with that clip, with that little nugget that Pooch puts on the YouTube chat, you can just look for UK Live online on YouTube and we'll take you over there. And some of you are actually watching this, some people are actually now watching the show